Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting of September 9th, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'll note that we are all here in attendance. I would like to ask our Director of Corporate Services to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right, next is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you. 8B9, Quinte Humane Society.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. 8B8, Grant Committee 4.1, food for thought.
Okay. All right, and if you can just fill out the paperwork and hand it to the clerk, please. Seeing none others, we will move to reading and confirmation of minutes, as we don't have any public meetings today. Minutes of the regular council meeting of August 12, 2019, the special council meeting of August the 26th, 2019, the regular in-camera meeting of August 12, 2019, and the special in-camera meeting of August 26, 2019. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Culhane for approval. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We'll move now to deputations, and first up, I will have the great pleasure of issuing or administering a new oath for one of our newest members of our fire service. All right. Today we have a member of the Belleville Fire Department taking an oath before council and the community, having completed all of the recruit training and skills confirmation required to successfully pass probation. Firefighters, as public servants, are here to serve the community to the best of their abilities. Members of the Belleville Fire Department team are held to a high standard. They are a unique and close group of individuals that will protect the public from loss of life and property, while at the same time protecting and looking after each other. Firefighter Mark Pagel. Can I ask you to raise your right hand and respond after I read out a paragraph with "I do," if you concur with the statements of oath? Do you solemnly swear that you will protect, safeguard, and preserve life and property against fire and other perils, and to maintain proficiency in the fire service, while honoring the three foundational pillars of the city that appear in our coat of arms, those being loyalty, tradition, and progress?
I do.
Furthermore, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as a firefighter according to the ethics and rules of the fire service, striving to promote the three lines of defense for fire and life safety, those being education, compliance, and response.
I do.
As a member of the Belleville Fire Department, do you accept these obligations as your responsibility and make these promises solemnly, freely, and upon your honor?
I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present Belleville Fire Department fourth class firefighter Mark Pagel with his badge and offer my handout as confirmation of his oath of commitment to our community. Congratulations.
We'll issue your challenge coin, and you know what comes with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Mark, can I just ask you to go around and shake hands?
Oh, excellent.
Thank you very much and congratulations. With the consent of council, before we move on with deputations, I want to take an opportunity to make a special presentation, which is very, very special. Today, we want to honor and recognize the commitment and the work of Mr. Simon Kang, who has assisted with the city's exchanges with our sister city of Gunpo, South Korea. And I'm really honored today to be joined by a number of people who have gone on trips with Mr. Kang, but more importantly, to be joined today by former mayors that we have in the audience. I want to ask if Chris King can first come forward to the podium. Chris is in charge of the Quinte Economic Development Commission. Chris has gone on a number of trips as we have successfully met with our colleagues in Gunpo, South Korea, and I'd like you to say a few words about our relationship with Mr. Simon Kang.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council and guests, and especially Simon. First of all, I'd like to say Annyeong Haseyo. Simon? So I had a chance to do a couple trips with the City of Belleville delegation, first in 2007 and then just this year in 2019. And, a lot of people ask me, what do you do on the trips and what's it all about? And, what's Simon's role in this? And I look at it, there's kind of three things that he helps us with. Number one, he's our interpreter. He's also our cultural advisor, and he's a great event coordinator. So as an interpreter, he helps bridge that cultural gap. He introduces us to the right people. He teaches us a few words to say and who to say them to. We learned some words like makju and soju and lots of other great things. As a cultural advisor, Simon first introduced me actually to Korean food back probably 12, 14 years ago when he was looking to bring that Korean restaurant to Belleville. And so whenever I went with him out to dinner, I'd make sure I'd stick close with him because he'd tell us not only where to eat, but how to eat it and what we were eating. And he also showed us how to cook some good Korean barbecue as we went. So we learned a lot of good culinary information from Simon as well. He also, as we went, he'd tell us what to wear. Is this a meeting we have to put a suit on? Is it more casual? And he kept that cultural aspect in mind where we went and if we're expected to bring a small gift of appreciation to our host. And he really looked after the cultural aspects quite nicely. But also, as an event coordinator, he certainly managed the expectations between us as the visiting delegation and the host cities. And I think his most important job, he said, I don't want to lose anyone and no one can get in trouble. And he did a great job at that. And at the end of the day, he'd make sure the trip was productive for all the team that went. So Simon, we thank you for volunteering your time and coordinating your energy to support that sister city relationship with the City of Belleville and the City of Gunpo. Simon, I'd say you're an all-around great guy. He takes pride in his role, and he really cares about the people he's tasked with supporting. He does a great job with that. You and your wife, Cindy, make sure that everyone has a productive and enjoyable visit. So, Simon, kamsahamnida.
Thank you. As those of us that lead the delegations on behalf of the City of Belleville, I'm really pleased to be joined today by two former mayors who have done this. I'd like to ask former Mayor Ross McDougall to come forward and to first say a couple of words on his experiences with Simon Kang.
Your Worship, members of council, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. Simon, I attended a couple of the events, one in South Korea and a couple here in Belleville on behalf of our sister city. Without Simon's help, without Simon initiating these, they wouldn't have happened. Simon was absolutely the creator of the relationship and the culture exchange. And certainly I was very grateful, Simon, and I know the city is. I think sometimes we wonder, do we get concrete results every time we go there or they come here? And I think the answer is no, not every time. But I think the events transcend the pure economic benefit. Even though I think that's important, we also get a broader cultural benefit from understanding other peoples. And Simon, that was a role that I think you played very well during the time we went to South Korea and while we're here as well. I certainly learned a great deal. I did not master chopsticks. I never did that, but I got the sake down really well. So, Simon, thank you for all your help. Great job.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call on former Mayor and current Member of Parliament Neil Ellis to come forward. I believe Mr. Ellis, you were 3 times to Gunpo as part of our exchanges, which I think is...
3 times, but I can only remember twice. No. It's an honor to be here, Council and esteemed guests, to present a plaque here to Simon tonight. But I want to say that when I first became mayor, Simon came to me very first when I was sitting in office and talked about the cultural exchange and brought me up to speed on it. And Cindy and Simon have been great guests of Korea and great citizens of this city. To honor them today is probably a long time coming, and I'd like to thank this council and Mayor Panchuk for offering the key to city to Simon. I know exchanges like this bring a lot to our community, make up the social fabric of our community, and not only exchanges of us going to Korea is Korea coming here. And I know as term of mayor, we had Korea here twice, and the work Simon effort he puts into these exchanges, if anybody is gone, he keeps us out of trouble is one thing, interpretation, and he helps me with the food, Korean food, and I don't agree at all times. But I also want to thank Simon, and I don't know if it's a thank you that I should. He took me and got me a custom-made suit, so I don't think he thought that I dressed that well when I was there, but he arranged for all that. So anything that you wanted in Korea, you just called Simon, and Simon was there to offer us closure on anything. So on behalf of the Government of Canada, it gives me great pleasure to join Belleville City Council tonight in congratulating Simon for your dedication and commitment to the city's cultural exchange program and sister city Gunpo, South Korea. I wish Simon and you and Cindy all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you. You gotta take 5 pictures to get a good one of me. This is my better side.
Well, thank you very much, particularly former mayors McDougall and Ellis for joining us here today. Simon was very, very good friends with a good friend of mine, former Mayor George Zagoras. And former Mayor Zagoras always spoke so highly of not just Simon, but Simon's family and the contributions that they made here as immigrants to our community, and the contributions they made, not just in terms of their business, but also making Belleville a better place. The idea of the exchange, as Simon relayed to me, started with his father, George. And he went back to South Korea on a visit and bumped into a childhood friend of his, who at that time was living in the city of Gunpo. And through the course of a conversation, Gunpo was trying to expand their city to the world. And they were looking at a number of different continents and different places to have sister city relationships. Coincidentally, at that same time, Hallett Climate Control was looking at setting up operations in North America in order to supply the building and the construction of Hyundai vehicles in Canada. And at that time, there was a facility in Quebec, and there was a facility in the GTA, and they felt that Belleville was an ideal place halfway. Well, George Kang came back to Canada and had a conversation with his friend, then Mayor George Zagoras, and the idea about the fact that Gunpo was looking for a sister city in Canada, and with what was happening in Belleville, made for an ideal place. Unfortunately, Simon's father was not able to see the exchanges happen because he passed away before that. And we're so happy to have his wife and Simon's mother here with us today to honor that initial legacy of starting that. But into Simon's hands came the torch of the exchange. And he has been involved with every delegation from the city of Belleville to Korea and back since then. He has traveled with Mayors Zagoras' delegation, Mayors McDougall, Mayor Ellis's, Mayor Sills, and with our recent delegation that was just this spring. I can tell you that as a mayor, and I'm sure the other mayors agree with me, when you are invited to bring a delegation on behalf of the city to a country that is as different as South Korea is, there's a fair amount of apprehension because we ultimately have responsibility for the people that are coming with us, both in their safety and the experience they're going to be going through and anything dealing with that. And it's nervous. I can honestly say that. I wasn't sure what to expect. That fear of the unknown is something. But Simon takes care of everything when we are going. He's able to explain what to expect, everything from not just the arrangements for transportation and the flights there, but what we can expect and what we will need to do our jobs appropriately when you go to a place that is as different as North America and Korea can be. As I said, where we're going, why we are going to that particular place, what the protocol issues are, so that we don't, because we never want to even in an accidental way offend people. We want to make sure that we are bringing the appropriate level of respect and dignity to the process that we're going to. Also interpretation. And interpretation that sometimes when you use South Korean interpreters, they don't necessarily understand our exact terminology, but having someone from Belleville with us communicates exactly what our intention is, even if sometimes it's not necessarily so appropriate. But he looks after us in the best sense of the word, and he has done this for so many years at significant sacrifice, not just in time and expenses, but also because he loves our city. I think the other mayors touched on this, and I would agree categorically. Our city is better because of our long-standing relationship with Gunpo, South Korea, and the biggest reason for that is Simon and his wife Cindy and what they do. So at this time, I'm going to ask my wife to assist me in presenting first to Cindy a gift, and then I will have the distinct pleasure to give the highest honor and award that the City of Belleville can bestow on an individual or an organization, that being the key to the city, to Mr. Simon Kang. And next, Simon. As I said, this is the highest award that we can give a citizen organization in the City of Belleville, and it is my distinct pleasure to present with you the key to the City of Belleville. Can I get the former mayors up with us? Neil and Ross? Can I get one more? Okay, we'll just. Okay.
No, other way. Top down. Nope, that's not working. Right there.
Cindy, do you want to come back up one more time? Thank you. Come up as well.
You guys want to come together? 일로 와. 사진 찍으러 와. 시끄러워 다. come on.
You can send you pictures, yeah. So I'm going to ask you to say a few words, and then after, I want you to go around and speak.
Oh, well, here we are. what you expect and what you don't expect. And up until this moment, nobody in city mentioned this is what's going to be happen. And I just heard last week, one of the secretaries sent an email that I will take some presentation. So I said, maybe the city will give me another, nice plaque or something. But this isn't the things that I never expected today. Thank you very much, worship and council and citizen, media, everybody. I don't think I did this much, but I don't know. It's been a long time. Yes, we started 1995 until now, so it's almost going into 24 years. And we had a lot of experience with past councils and city clerks and other business people here in Belleville. Went to Korea with me and with somebody else too. And every time that we go, I wasn't expect to be something pretty exciting. But when we made the trip and finished to come back, and everybody learned something, which I never said that you have to learn this or you have to learn that. But they made themselves to learn their own way of learning about South Korea and Twin City in Gumpo. Back into 1996, that my father passed away, and that's the year that we made the sign. And I wasn't thinking that this Twin City relationship would be going this far, but we did it. It's not just me, I don't think. It's from everybody, from the city of Belleville. Councilors been helping me, all the past mayors helped me, and the media, they always bring it into the good, the newsletter about Twin City. And that's how we made us strong up until now. That's what I believe. And it sounds like I've been a supervisor for all the delegation members, but it wasn't, I tried to take care of everybody, but I don't really want to be a supervisor, say, do this and do that. But we are old enough to know all those. And the part of, I would say, the fun is one that I like to mention today. It's a different culture, different politics, different kind of economy, different kind of foods. It's all different, but we all joined in together and to bring it into the fun. And that's why we have coming in this far. Anyway, thank you very much for the special honor to be in here today. And maybe in the future, I don't know how long I'm gonna be living in Belleville, probably all the way. And and I'll be stick around with the city and try not to go too far for myself. I want to be corporate, and I want to be stay with what I am and what I was. So thank you, and thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. Who would have thought that there would be that many varieties of kimchi that we could try? And who would have thought about how much Councillor Millette really loves kimchi? And so, and I know that every single trip that you have gone on, including the trips that they have come here, there are stories like that of our exchange, and it's been fantastic. You know, I know that it's been a long time, and you've said that that time will come to an end at some point. And issuing the key to the city to you does not mean that you can stop today. You made a deal with me that as long as I am mayor, you will be helping with our exchanges, and I'm going to hold you to that. So expect that. But thank you very much to you and your family. You are welcome to leave now if you'd like. We're going to move into our deputations, and I will move to the deputation by Janet Gerald, the Executive Director of the Quinte Arts Council, who will make a deputation to council.
My first deputation, I have to follow that. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak today. I want to first acknowledge this council and its support for arts and culture in this community. I hope you all got the handouts, and part of it I wanted to acknowledge the dedicated Board of Directors for the Quinte Arts Council, beginning with Jenny Woods, our chair, Dan Atkinson, our past chair, Andrea Kerr, Maury Flunder, our treasurer, Debbie McKinney, Chris Bennett, Bob Blanchard, who is here this evening, Lise Lindenberg, and Ann Cunningham, our honorary board members. And we have a new position on our board, and it's a student representative. Last year it was Ben Reed. He's off to university, so this year we have Rhea Dukowitz. I also want to acknowledge the team at the Quinte Arts Council. I now have been there for a year. I started in August of 2018, and we have all new staff. So we also welcomed Adam Gray, who's a local filmmaker, and Fiona Campbell, who is from Madoc, and she is a writer. They have loads of experience, dedication, and a passion for supporting the arts in this community. Overall, I just wanted to do a brief on what we do, and then following that, we have just a quick PowerPoint presentation that puts a visual to what I'm saying. So to begin with, the Quinte Arts Council is a granting body. We support arts education in the local schools from kindergarten to grade 12. We bring visual and performing artists into the classrooms in the Quinte area to train the students for arts education. The Quinte Arts Council also supports our next generation of artists. We grant 6 bursaries each spring to students pursuing arts at the post-secondary level. We have seen a significant increase over the past year in our applications. For example, we received 25 bursary applications from graduating students compared to 9 the previous year. So we are looking to increase the number of grants that we can provide. On a side note, arts education, we also take in interns from Loyalist College, and this year one of our interns was actually from Gunpao, South Korea. He met the mayor on a couple occasions, and his name was Brian Choi, and he actually has some, he took photography, or some of his photographies in that magazine that we provided. Bringing me to the umbrella, the magazine. The magazine continues to be the best art, culture, and heritage promotion material in the area. Going from a newspaper to the magazine format, that was just a big leap forward for our team, and it is the best publication option to celebrate the beauty and arts and culture in our community. The Quinte Arts Council has annual events, one of them being plein air. At this time, I would like to thank the mayor and council for supporting the plein air festival in 2019. Plein air is painting outdoors on site, and artists from across the province of Ontario traveled to Belleville to paint in different locations in this community. Thank you to Mayor Panchuk, Councillors Ryan Williams and Kelly McCaw. Saw Chris Millette there, Garnet Thompson, everyone who was able to attend the plein air festival, thank you very much. One of the important things that happened and came out of that plein air festival was that we had over 350 local students participate in that festival. So they were able to get out of the classroom for the day and paint on locations all around the community. And we had that, their 350 paintings were on display at the Quinte Arts Council Gallery. I have to tell you, it was one of the most inspiring art shows that we have had. And I'd like to thank Bill Sanderson for coming to celebrate with the students that evening. And locally, Reed's Dairy for supporting the awards for all the students. Every one of the students received something for participating. Every other year, the Quinte Arts Council puts on Expressions, which is a way to celebrate local artists. It's held in the spring at the John M. Parrott Gallery. Thank you to Councillors Paul Carr and Pat Culhane. I did see you in attendance at that one. Art in the community, we have a gallery and it supports local artists. Some of the shows this year included the benefits of art on your mental health. We celebrated local artist Robert Tokley. We celebrated the LGBTQ community. We had that student art show. It's a big success. We celebrated the BAA. They are currently at the Arts Council. Our upcoming show is photography, and it features Mark Hopper and Ash Merle. In November, we have a self-portrait art show, and then in December, the gallery belongs to the artists of Tyndonega. So lots of art going on. One of our special annual events is the Arts Recognition Luncheon for the Arts. This year marks the 25th anniversary for the Quinte Arts Council. Since 1994, we've recognized those in our community who have made a significant contribution to arts and culture. You're all cordially invited to September 19th at 11:30 at Jinkles Restaurant. We are celebrating this year Catherine Taylor of the Quinte Ballet, Andrea Kerr for her arts education, Holly Dewar from DocFest, Dave Bush for Front Porch Shenanigans, and yours truly, Mayor Mitch Panchuk, for putting arts on the table and keeping it there. Thank you. One other thing that we do is that we put workshops on for artists. This year we hosted 2 grant writing workshops. They were specific to the Belleville Community Arts and Culture Fund, and that was in collaboration with the Sue Holland and the Parrott Gallery. We are doing literary workshops, and we've hosted marketing and branding for artists, which is very important for artists. They're often so good at their art, but not good at putting it out there. Somebody needs to do that for them. So we support the artists in that way. We promote local arts and culture. Our website, more than 1,000 events are posted on our website annually. We then spread the word. So we take those posts and we email them off to all of our members. That email goes into groups and members, and it reaches about 6,000 people a week. Then we include them in our weekly column in the Belleville Intelligencer, Cultivating Creativity, and we support them, promote them locally on all of our multiple social media platforms daily. Last thing I just would like to mention is that we have an annual fundraiser, and our team is at this moment in works with the Empire Theatre for our fundraiser this December. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, we just have a quick PowerPoint presentation, which someone's going to press go on. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll watch a PowerPoint, and then I'll ask our colleagues if we have any questions.
Perfect.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you. Colleagues, do we have any questions for Ms. Jarrell? Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Worship. Just to thank you for your presentation and to tell you that I believe we all feel strongly that arts and culture are absolutely essential to a community. And what you're doing is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Williams?
Thank you. To echo that, I think art is and local art is the very essence of the soul of our city. I think, you know, everyone you talk about, from Mark Hopper to just the, again, knowing that Mr. Clements has an album called Born in Belleville, and he's part of Bruce Springsteen band in the past, and, you know, I think it's phenomenal what you're doing. My question is, what is your biggest challenge right now? I think you've done some great things up to 25 years. What is the biggest challenge you and the board and arts in general have in Belleville this year coming up?
Well, I think the biggest challenge would have to be finding it to be financially stable. So we have to find a way in order to make sure that we can afford to bring light to the arts in the community. So I would say that's our biggest challenge. We want to be able to give grants. I wanted to grant every one of those kids, but we had 6, you know. Bring more arts and education. I'm finding that one of the reasons we're getting so many applications for funding from the schools is because of the cuts that are happening in the schools. So they come to the Queenie Arts Council to get the funding to pay the artists to come into the schools. One thing I forgot to mention, that art show for plein air, it was just so moving, and the Queenie Arts Council was able to pair each of the classrooms, there was 13, 15 classrooms, with a local artist. So the artists went in and mentored each, and they were paid to do that. So I think it's very important that artists be paid so that they can continue to work. And so financial sustainability is our biggest challenge. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Kelly.
Through, Mr. Mayor. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams talked about some of the challenges that the arts community have, and I know a lot of the local musicians, they struggle because they have part-time, full-time jobs, and the music career is part-time, really, where they want it just to be a full-time job and not worry about having that other job. Unfortunately, we live in that day and age where it's really difficult, and that's not just for musicians, but it's for artists and anybody that's in the art culture, if you will. Do you find in this area that enough people respect, I'm going to target musicians, that they're willing to pay them what they're worth? I'm a big proponent to make sure that they're always paid when they're at events, and the charity's got to stop to some degree because this is their profession, this is their gift. That's always a struggle for artists.
I agree completely. To answer your question, I would say, I would quote Mark Rajad, if he'll allow me. I interviewed him one time and I asked, you know, how do you support the musicians, and he said if they can do it in Toronto, they can do it here. And we should be paying the artists properly. So that, in order to continue with arts and culture and showing them that it's that important, we need to financially support them so the artists can continue for sure.
Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Gerald, I think, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. I think, as you've seen in the past year, or almost a year that this council has been active, I think you may be noticing that we're on board. We get it. We understand how important the arts community is. And I think if you can take anything away from today, I just, as a side note, my fellow councillors who went to the plein air festival, it was fabulous. And if anything showed us that we're turning a corner and it is getting to be quite a mainstream thing and something to celebrate, I think you should take away from this that we will continue to have your back, and in any way, shape, or form, this council is committed to helping the arts flourish in Belleville.
I thank you. And I would like to acknowledge that Bob Blanchard is here today. He was the chair for the Plein Air Festival for a number of years, and he is the reason that, from our end, why it's successful. And we appreciate all of the support that the City of Belleville has given that's made that festival continue. So thank you to Bob Blanchard.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for coming. Great believer in the arts. I think ever since a number of us started on council, arts has been certainly a very vital part of our community, no matter what the arts, whether it's music, painting. Do you find sense in the arts, in the painting, the artist, with the three of them coming closer together downtown, has that helped in the Arts Association with that happening down with the new ones coming down to the old Stroud's building and grouping it together?
I think there is actually 5 in total, and because they're so close in proximity, now visitors that come down for the strolls are making it to all 5 of them. The BAA has moved down closer to central downtown, and for sure, and it's kind of nice because while we're supporting the BAA currently, there's a nice collaboration between all of the galleries, so I think they do complement one another very well. The strolls have been very successful, and they are continuing.
Right. Councillor Sanderson, did I see your hand? No, sorry. Anyone else? Well, Ms. Gerald, thank you very much. You know, I know you were asked a question about challenges, but if we were to speak also about the opportunities, things may never have been better, and in terms of the future for arts, culture, and heritage. And I consider them all to be part of that three-legged stool that's so important for our community. I want to thank you and all of your members, your volunteers and your board members for all the work you do, but in particular for your assistance and working collaboratively with us for the first ever Mayor's Week for the Arts. 2020 is going to be back bigger and better than it was this last year, and the Arts and Plein Air Festival is such an important part of it. And you know, I'm so grateful for my colleagues that when I can't attend all the events, in particular your events, they're snapped up. People want to go, and I'm happy to hear you mention every name around the table having attended some of your events this last year. So we thank you for your deputation. As Councillor Millette said, not only are we behind you, but we're putting our money where our mouth is. And we have increased significantly, doubled the Belleville Community Arts and Culture Fund. That is going to continue. It's going to good use in our community, and we are also helping in other ways. And so we will continue to do that. But I think the most important thing you said today, and I know that you have a lot of time for Mark Rashad, as do I. The most important thing is that all of the events that we did with the Mayor's Week for the Arts and the Arts and Plein Air Festival, we paid the artists. And that is the most important thing that we can do to ensure that that sector is thriving and going forward, is to make sure that we compensate people for their time and their energies. And in that respect, we understand that as a council, and we're looking forward to a very bright future. So thank you for your time, and please convey our best wishes and appreciation to your board. I know a number of us are attending the luncheon. If those who cannot attend or said they couldn't attend, if plans change, please let our office know so we can get you there, but we're looking forward to that event on the 19th. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, the resolution that the deputation by Janet Gerald, Executive Director, Quinte Arts Council, regarding the many new exciting things that the Quinte Arts Council is undertaking and reporting on the recent Pren Air Art Festival be received. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then next we'll move to Melissa Wyatt of the Quinte United Way. The Youth to Youth will make a deputation to council. Is Melissa here today? Okay, Melissa's not here. So the Youth to Youth conference is coming up shortly. I don't have the details. I do know the grant committee considered a request and council endorsed the recommendation to provide some support. That will be on September the 27th. And she's not able to be here today, but that's what she was coming to talk about. So I thank them for that work. Correspondence, there is none today, so motion to go into committee of the whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with Councillor Carr in the chair. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. 8A1, naming of corporate assets policy, Director Corporate Services, Clerk's Report number DCS-2019-36. The resolution reads that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report number DCS-2019-36, Council approve the naming of corporate assets policy. Moved by Mayor Panchuk, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or comments? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you. Through the chair, question regarding the policy itself, specifically section 5, the second paragraph on page 4 reads, the selection of a name will be based on a number of criteria, including but not limited to, and one of the items on there is councillors who have served 10 years or more. So I think if we're going to name some of our assets, some of our landmarks, it should be to somebody that's worthy of recognition. And I don't think that tenure on council would necessarily translate to that sort of recognition. But those are my thoughts. If somebody can comment on that, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I'll pass that to the director.
Through the chair to Councillor Sanderson, and just for council's consideration, certainly it's a policy for your consideration, can be amended as you see fit. Number of municipal policies of this nature were reviewed in the preparation of this policy. Policy was drafted and circulated through EMT and reviewed a number of times. The attempt was being made for some recognition of some duration for councillors, for recognition to be considered even. So the recognition at that point at 10 years would be at least two full terms and a portion of a third term. So most policies had some duration for council members. All had an elected mayor being recognized, going on a list for recognition. So it was felt that there had to be some kind of cutoff. A 10-year was just a round number that recognized more than one term. It was kind of in the middle of all of the policies that were reviewed. Some were shorter, we're in the midst right now of looking at all of the councillors that have sat as Belleville council members to try and get a handle on how many past members of council we would be qualifying at 10 years to kind of just get a scope of how many councillors would even qualify at 10 years. But I think the challenge is where to set that bar. Some were 4 terms, some were 2 terms, some were 1 term, but we're just looking for a happy medium. So if council, if the majority of council is looking for a higher bar, then certainly we're open to that.
Yeah, just a follow on if I can. So the current process allows for anybody that has served on council to be named. So I don't think that we necessarily have to state it in a policy. I think that opportunity exists today. And if it were to exist, this might be nitpicking, but if it's 10 years and you serve 2.5 terms, you know, why did you have to exit that third term? So, you know, it should either be 8 or 12 if you were just going to use mathematics, right? But again, I have no issue with recognizing the former elected mayors. I think that stands alone from councillors. But I just don't think it should be automatic, just based on the fact that you've served for 10 years. Those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, the director has more to comment on that.
Through the chair, just for Councillor Sanderson, the 10-year recognition, and I talked to a couple of my colleagues in other municipalities, term limits historically were significantly different. We, over time, went from 1 to 2 years to 3 years to now the current 4. So there are some of your past council colleagues that had irregular term limits. So some served for a number of terms, but were elected over a number of years or terms of council that only got to 10 but served a number of terms. So my clerk colleagues, there was a number of them that had 10 years. So not looking at current councillors with 4-year term limits that get 2.5. Not that we're looking at you exiting mid-term. Not that that befalls any of you. But just a recognition that some of your predecessors may have served 3 terms and got to 10, or with a mix of a 2 and a couple 3-year terms, something of that nature.
Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An observation further to Councillor Sanderson's observation, if you will. I think the guidelines, council approval is required for all naming and renaming of corporate assets. So I believe when we get to the 10-year yardstick or whatever it's had, should someone, I believe, do something so spectacular within 1 term or, you know, however, I believe built into this process, we would have the freedom to waive a certain requirement if that circumstance was such that it was important that that person or be recognized. So I don't think these are hard and fast. I think these are guidelines, and should it come to renaming an asset after someone and they don't quite fit the time requirement, so be it. I believe we have the freedom, and future councils probably would as well. So I don't have a problem with it. Thank you.
Mayor Panchuk.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. If I can just make a couple of points. So the current policy is completely an ad hoc one, which means that it comes up individually. And it requires that members of the community, whether they served on council or not, that they be nominated for consideration. And we have a variety, we have, I think, a discrepancy in terms of, in particular, members who have served in an elected role in terms of the consistent application of a corporate naming policy. So part of when I came in, we had only 2 items, both of which were leftovers from the previous term, that we had names that had been brought forward. We just dealt with former Councillor George Beer in Thurlow a couple months ago, but that was a long time coming. It seems to me, from my understanding of this, is that we kind of go in spurts, where all of a sudden we go long distances with no recognition opportunities, particularly for length of service, and then we all of a sudden have a whole bunch, and then we go another long period. So part of having the policy is to structure a predictable role that we go through, so we're not dealing with it all at once, and that we can also catch up. The reason why 10 years was selected was because of the terms and the difference in terms previously. You know, there are many people who serve a term. There are fewer that serve 2 terms. There are even fewer that serve 3 terms or longer. And when we look at the idea of having 3 terms, currently that's 12 years of service, which is a significant amount of time. Previously, 3 terms before 2006 would have been 9 years, which would have been under. So trying to find that balance, we chose the number of 10 years, that if you serve in an elected capacity for 10 years, and not picking the number of terms, but 10 years, which would generally be 3 terms, then you are automatically to be having something considered to be named after you. And council will make that ultimate decision in terms of what it is. In particular, it was also important for me that we have a process where we recognize non-elected members of our community that have made significant contributions. And so we have a process that continues before where they can be nominated for consideration. Councillor Millett is quite right. You know, for example, let's say that in the first year of a councillor's term, they were so spectacular and they accomplished so many great things, and then they chose to leave office after that 1 year because they were satisfied that they accomplished enough. We could still name something after them because it could be nominated and we go through that process. But it wouldn't be automatic because they would not have served the full measure of 10 years. So I just hope that gives a little bit of background to members of council and the public, why it's coming before us. This is kind of a housekeeping attitude to tie it up so we have a proper structure. And it's not designed to name something after anybody that ever gets elected, but it's designed to recognize the sacrifice and the commitment and the service that someone would do, particularly as they serve 3 terms or more. Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, the chair. So I think the policy is a great idea. I don't have any issue with the policy. I just and the current ad hoc process, if you will, would allow for anybody under any circumstance to have their name brought forward. So I'm not hung up on whether somebody served 4 years or 5 years on council. Where I have an issue, or at least a struggle, is that because you served 3 terms on council, I read this to mean that you automatically qualify to get something in terms of a naming. And I don't think that should be the benchmark. So, you know, I think I have no issue with the mayors, but for councillors, I just don't think it belongs in that statement at all. So. However, I don't know whether that would require a friendly amendment to the existing policy or whether there's general consensus around the table on that, or whether we just let it go as is. I'll look for some direction.
Well, my suggestion would be is to make a motion if you want to amend the policy.
Okay, so I'll make that motion to amend the policy to remove the section that says councillors who have served 10 years or more.
Okay, moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Do you want to speak to that any further? You have the opportunity.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? Councillor Thompson.
I've read this, and I think the intent Councillor Sanderson is bringing, that we eliminate the 10 years, which will include more people, whether they serve 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, or 20 years. But I think by leaving the 10-year period in there gives you some little more guidelines to go by. And, you know, I personally feel that certainly we put in there former elected mayors. They're important, but so is the councillors. So if we leave mayors in there, then I maybe answer my own question here. If you leave mayors in there, then all councillors should be included. So I just caution that maybe if we're going to leave mayors in there, that maybe Bill's motion or Councillor Sanders' motion isn't all wrong. Then it puts everybody in that same position of the impossibility of having something recognized that. So.
just to be clear on that comment, though, the motion that's on the floor is to eliminate that line. So that's eliminating, not the 10 years, eliminating counselors.
Oh, no. Sorry, I thank you for clarifying that. Then, okay, I won't support the motion then.
Okay. Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. If I can be clear, if Councillor Sanderson's motion passes, then no one can bring forward a councillor's name for recognition because we've removed councillors from the policy altogether? Is that correct?
Refer to the director on this one, and maybe Councillor Sanderson. We'll see where it goes.
Through the chair, I would suggest if the policy carried, an applicant could still bring forward a former council member as someone they're making an application for. They just wouldn't be covered under the policy. Like a former elected mayor, they would be just someone that was was the subject of an application.
Thank you. Then I'm going to support Councillor Sanderson's motion because I don't feel that longevity equals quality by any means. I think everyone makes their own best effort and will be recognized if someone chooses to recommend us to be recognized, and I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to support.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, on further clarification, if I was making that motion, I won't support the motion. I would think it's former elected mayors and councillors, if you want to get it down to the nitty-gritty. Then that makes it clear for all councillors and former mayors to be named. I think taking councillors out of there leaves a bit of a void in there for misinterpretation, so I'm not going to support the motion.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment? If none, all in favor? 3, 4, motion fails on the amendment. So back to the policy as a whole. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That motion carries. 8A2, Code of Conduct Policy, Members of Council and Local Boards, Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report Number DCS-2019-37, resolution that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report Number DCS-2019-37, Council approved the Code of Conduct for Members of Council and Local Boards policy, and that Bylaw 2019-48, Procedural Bylaw, be amended for Council's consideration. Moved by Mayor Panchuk, seconded by Councillor Millette. Questions or comments? Mayor Panchuk.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. We as a council requested that the Integrity Commissioner assist us with drafting the new Code of Conduct policy because it's now applicable to local boards in addition to members of council, and we wanted to have some clarifications. And also that at his presentation that he made, I believe it was in June, that there'd be some, that he wanted to clarify and put some things in. So I think it's a very good, a good start at a document. I do have some questions, and I'm thinking that what I would like to see us do is perhaps after we get questions on the floor, is then at that point table the policy or table the motion until the Director of Corporate Services can communicate with the Integrity Commissioner and receive those answers. For example, some of the questions I have deal with item number 15, which is on pages 24 and 25. And I'll start off by saying that I'm very familiar with the Integrity Commissioner and the role, because last term it was a motion that I brought forward for us to have this position, and now all municipalities are required to have them under provincial legislation. But if we take a look at item number 15.3, that deals with the fact that the Integrity Commissioner should not provide any member any advice or opinion with respect to the obligations of another member. And so basically what that means is that if potentially, and let me just say that potentially if a member of council had an item under 15.1 where they may be in conflict, and they chose not to either act or seek advice on it, then no other member of council would be able to say, I'd like to see what's happening. So let's use, for example, let's say there was something that I had either pecuniary interest or there was a code issue or whatnot, and I refused to be reasonable with my colleagues when they came and spoke to me about it, and we wanted to have an opinion of the Integrity Commissioner. I don't think an individual should be able to trigger it for someone else, but I do think that council as a whole should be able to request the Integrity Commissioner provide an opinion. And the reason for that is because I was a member of a council where another member was found in conflict of the Code of Conduct, or sorry, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And subsequent to that, we were all found to have behaved improperly. Even though the system didn't, the public did. I can't tell you how many times people ask me, why did you not say anything about this? And I said, well, you know, the Municipal Code of Conduct is an individual council member's responsibility, and it's up to them to do it. And then they said, well, yes, but the city paid for the defense when you knew and you should have said something about it. So we are judged collectively by our actions, and I think there should be a provision in our process with the Integrity Commissioner that if we, by resolution of majority of council, want to have a ruling by the Integrity Commissioner on one of our positions, I think it should be permissible. So that's the first question that I would have as it deals with 15.3. 15.5, you know, I come back to this. I raised this before when Mr. Fleming was at the podium, and it's regarding the fact that the advice and opinions received by any member are personal to the member and are considered confidential. No opinion or advice may be shared by the Integrity Commissioner without the written permission of the member who requested the opinion or advice. The member has no obligation to share the advice received from the Integrity Commissioner with any other member or individual. You know, again, I believe that if public resources, if the money that ratepayers give to the City of Belleville are used to provide advice to councillors, then it should be made public. If we wish not to have it made public, then we should pay for it ourselves. And I think that this is, and speaking with both our MPP and the minister, this is one of those oversight issues, or it was an oversight by the provincial government when they brought this part of the legislation, because under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, the only avenue residents or councillors had to challenge people's pecuniary interests was to go to the Superior Court process, which is an entirely public process. Everything from the intentional statement of claim as well as the judgment, it's made completely public. But if we're asking an Integrity Commissioner for advice that we're relying upon, it should be, and the city is going to be paying for it, it should be made public. And again, I want to get an answer specifically on that from the Integrity Commissioner. And the last thing, which is related to it, deals with the fact that there is a, I wonder if the clerk can help me. What's the part where councillors should not be seeking unnecessary or unnecessary opinions where it becomes too expensive? There's a 15.4. Thank you, sorry. Members shall be mindful to the cost to the municipality to obtain the advice or opinion of the Integrity Commissioner and shall not abuse this entitlement. The question I have for the Integrity Commissioner is, how do the rest of us know this is the case, potentially, if the information is not shared with anyone else? So those are the four areas that I would like to ask. Sorry, the three areas. And at the end of any discussion here, I'd like to make a motion that we table this motion until the next meeting of council, or until the Director of Corporate Services receives a written response from Mr. Fleming. Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, Section 223.51 of the Municipal Act says the Commissioner, referring to the Integrity Commissioner, and every person acting under the instructions of the Commissioner will preserve secrecy with respect to all matters that come to his or her knowledge in the course of his or her duties under this part. The exception is despite subsection 1, as information may be disclosed in a criminal proceedings as required by law or otherwise in accordance with this part. And then to Mayor Panchuk's point about disclosure, release of advice 2.1 of the municipal, or 223.5, 2.1 release of advice, advice provided by the commissioner to a member under paragraph 4, 5, and 6 in subsection 223.31 may be released with the member's written consent. So looking at the policy, it was written within the context of the legislation. You make actually a very good point. There's a flaw in the legislation, but I don't think our integrity commissioner can do much until the government changed that municipal act, but I just thought I would bring that up.
Well, just further on that, I'd like to have that in writing from them as an explanation, because then that will be helpful for us as we lobby the provincial government when they look at amendments to a number of things as it comes to the municipal act. Like, you know, we know that for the next election, there will be amendments to the municipal elections processes. There were a number of you know, problems that came up this time that I don't think had been considered, and I think this is some of them, particularly as it pertains to pecuniary interest. Again, you know, it's a completely public process if anyone is to be challenged to seek a decision of the Superior Court on pecuniary interest, right from the statement of claim to initiate it to the decision. But yet, we have the ability to seek an opinion from the Integrity Commissioner and then not do it. You know, I understand completely if individual members, and I have done this previously where I have paid for my own opinion, and that is an item that's privileged between myself and my solicitor on that. But when you're using the city's Integrity Commissioner, using city taxpayer money, I think it's different. So, but I appreciate that clarification, and I know that it will require some changes, but that's why I'm asking for this letter to be done. We can come back, we'll get the answer, then we can adopt the policy and then be able to also lobby the provincial government for changes.
Very good. Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Hines. I wonder, is it possible to have a cost to date? Just a general cost to date for that office, the uses of that office?
Ms. Hines?
I can bring that forward at a future meeting. Add that to the list.
Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you, Councillor Carr. So I'm not sure whether it's the time to bring this up or not, or when the Integrity Commissioner comes back, if that's how we go forward. I have a few concerns, and you know, I think some of the concerns are shared. I know Mayor Panchuk mentioned a few. The one, you know, there's two actually that stick out in my mind, and one is 15.4 about using the Integrity Commissioner as your personal advisor, and I believe there needs to be a boundary set there. Like either so many, you know, questions or so many, you know, up to a dollar amount, something. There has to be a boundary on what is too much, if you understand what I mean. Mm-hmm. So what is too much? What, you know, how many inquiries are too many? I think we need to, if we can, within this policy, set that. So if you have to go and you have to talk to the Integrity Commissioner 3 times a year, fair enough. 3 times a year, that's your max. Anything over and above that, then you pay for it. There's no reason that the taxpayer should be on the hook for someone using that advice or that person as your own personal advisor. So that's the one caveat I had was 15.4, and the fact that we need to set a boundary and need to be able to specify what is too much. How many times are too many times? The other was 15.7. So council may require any member to undertake training with the Integrity Commissioner where council determines that the member has requested opinions and advice more frequently than reasonable circumstances. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying. Why should a taxpayer, any taxpayer, I mean, I'm a taxpayer, I resent the fact that my elected official would not be knowledgeable enough or have ethics that they would have to basically undergo training. So I think that there has to be some cost borne by the member that is forced to seek this advice, because we can't expect taxpayers to teach members how to behave. So those are my two points there, and I don't know whether now's the time or when it actually comes back.
Well, why don't you suggest that it looks as though the Integrity Commissioner will be coming back with some information. Perhaps maybe the suggestion in terms of suggested set limit, or in addition to that, the rate in which the Integrity Commissioner charges the city per advice or per request, and then that will give us as a council an opportunity to gauge it to determine what we determine is a reasonable amount. I guess maybe if, does that suffice for you?
I think that would.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, if it's, if this gets tabled, and I think I understand the reasoning why for the wording, will we have a chance to submit a couple of the questions that we have in the wording of it so that he can bring it back, or what's the process? Like, there's just one 11.3, the wording in it, I think one duplicates the other. So will we have an opportunity to ask the Integrity Commissioner then, or do we ask beforehand to clarify those?
My suggestion would be is if you see some issues, as your other colleagues have pointed out,
Yep.
this is the opportunity to bring them forward, and then the clerk will contact the Integrity Commissioner. We'll get answers and clarification on the entire policy, and then that way council's looking at an amended version down the road.
The one, it's maybe very minor, maybe I'm not understanding it. It's on 11.3, B and C seem to be saying the same thing. It says, members should take person's name, phone number, details of the inquiry, complaint, and advise them that the matter will be referred to the CEO for review and resolution. Then in C, it says the same thing, refer the public to the CEO to address any further actions required if he or she deems it necessary. It seems both of them are going to the CEO. Is that the proper wording? I'd just like to have that clarified, that's all.
1 second. Well, it looks as though, as how I interpret it, as it would go to the CAO, but then and then he will deal with it through the appropriate department, and then if the public member feels, or the member feels that it hasn't been dealt with, then it's another opportunity, I guess, to go back, is how I read it. I'll refer to the clerk, though.
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson, it simply is giving members an option of how to escalate. And the second, 11.3B, is where a member is reluctant to contact the department that they have an issue with directly. It allows them to go to the CAO, but it doesn't, that's just if they don't want to go to the department directly. And C is if they feel that it hasn't been resolved, then they go to the CAO, but it's talking about escalation. So they're not the same. C is strictly if it's been dealt with and they don't feel it's been resolved to their satisfaction, then they go to the CAO. B is if they're separate altogether. If they have an issue with a department and they don't feel comfortable going to that department, then they go to the CAO.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. So beyond the points that have been made, and certainly I can see the merit in them, I'm sort of troubled by Section 11, just interaction and staff. So the fact that we've got 2 pages of documentation explaining how we need to interact with staff sort of suggests to me that there's a problem. Because why would we need 2 pages of documentations in terms of, as a counselor, if I receive a complaint from a resident and I want to resolve it? I can tell you that my current practice is to go to whoever I'm familiar with and try and resolve it there in the organization. I very rarely would take an issue to the CAO if I can resolve it, further down the organization. So I just wonder if this section is just maybe a bit too wordy and a bit too cumbersome, and whether it should just be cleaned up to sort of simplify it.
Well, this is your opportunity. We, as a council, asked for the Integrity Commissioner to present a draft policy.
Yeah.
I would suggest that some of it is boilerplate. I don't think for a second that there's a suggestion that there's a problem with council's interaction with staff that we require 2 pages. There was the code that exists now is very minuscule on that front. We do have a harassment policy in general that applies to everyone, including members of council, but this is boilerplate, so if there's things that you or any member sees that, as we've been doing, this would be the time to trim it down.
Well, I've got nothing specific other than the fact that if we're gonna table it, I'd like staff to take a look at this and just pare it back to its bare essentials.
Okay. So we make note of that. Okay. Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Director McDonald. 11.3 in particular, Councillor Sanderson has raised the same first point that I wanted to speak to, but the entire mandate could be changed by putting may instead of should, as far as my reading goes, as long as there's an option there, because this precludes interacting with Manager Reid, who is most receptive. All of our directors and managers, and if there's an issue, if I, for example, am over-contacting, I certainly would not be offended if anyone pointed that out to me. But if the option is there rather than a mandate, which I read should to be a mandate, it's too restrictive, the way I read it, so I'll add my objection on that.
So your suggestion then, just for
Change
clarifications and
should
notes?
to may.
Should
so
to
that
may
you
and
have
11.3, okay.
You have the option of continuing what is historical precedent.
Okay.
Prior practice for many years.
Is that all, Councillor Culhane?
Oh, thank you.
Yep,
Yes.
no problem. Councillor Williams.
Thank you through the chair, and I think just to echo your boilerplate sentiment, I picked up Quinte West, which was passed on March. Very, very similar, almost word for word. So I think what we've seen is if there is, and I'm not sure who they have for integrity commissioner, if they're using the same or if there perhaps is just one extended code of conduct and general conflict of interest policy that every council is following. But I think that's comforting to see that it's very similar. I just had one, I think there was a word missing. It's on 10.2. Let's see the page, I think it's 22. The word, it's information related to decisions and resolutions of council, a board or committee, as the case may be, will normally be communicated to the community by the head of council, the board or committee, and I think the word is missing chair, as the case may be, or his or her designate. So I think that was just a missing. That's, I think it's page 20. Who's the page number? Page 19.
Okay, clerk has that. Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Communications and Media Relations. 10.1, members when communicating with the public and media, I would like, if it stays media, also dash social media, will accurately and adequately communicate the attitudes and decisions of the council, board of committee, even if a member disagrees with a majority decision, so that there is respect for and integrity in the decision-making process. So I would like to add social media in there as well.
So if I could then, so 10.1 members when communicating with the public, including social media and media, but after public include social media, and then that way that's a platform. Are you good with that? Okay, very good.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm always okay with that. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Millette. I'll come back.
Just a comment further to the interaction with staff. I agree to some extent with Councillor Sanderson, but I believe it's absolutely important that we establish a firewall between ourselves and, for lack of a better term, rank and file civic employees. I personally interact with a department head on any issue unless it's a direct matter related to a committee issue dealing with the staff person, you know, in our inner workings of our committees. But in a lot of cases, I believe staff is put in the uncomfortable position, unfortunately, by some of us, going directly, circumventing the department head and going to a staff member. Now, I think this can be pared down a bit, and again, a lot of it is boilerplate, but I believe that there should be proper protocol in terms of dealing with staff, and this is something of a firewall issue that I think is very important. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No, I think everybody's went around.
So let me take a crack at a tabling motion that we request that the Director of Corporate Services seek clarification. Actually, let me just back up. I wonder if I can ask the Director McDonald how he would like this motion worded with respect. I see it as two parts. One is what we're going to request the Integrity Commissioner to provide a response on, and the second item is what we want staff to take a look and provide their advice on. I see the items in section 15 as that were raised, the 4 items, as being dealt with by the Integrity Commissioner, and I think the items in 10 and 11, so 10 dealing with communication and 11 dealing with interactions with staff, that I think our own people can give some comments on that part of it. It doesn't have to go to the Integrity Commissioner. And what I will say is I think Councillor Williams is 100% right. You know, Mr. Fleming serves as the Integrity Commissioner for more than just the City of Belleville. And he has acted in municipal law for many years. And I'm sure he has seen a lot of things with a lot of different councils over the years. So this is the result of some areas where obviously there have been problems and they've needed clarification, or as a firewall, as Councillor Millette has said. So I think that's good. So that's why I'm thinking let's have him deal with the items, because we're paying him a great deal of money to deal with the item 15. And I think on item 15 it was 15.3, 15.4, 15.5, and 15.7. How does the clerk want the tabling motion worded to provide that direction?
Through the chair to Mayor Panchuk and council, simple tabling motion pending the revisions as noted for staff, and that the Integrity Commissioner review section 15 revisions, proposed revisions, and provide a comment back to council for consideration would suffice for our purpose.
And that'll allow you to populate your instructions with the individual questions that we all asked about the 15? Okay, so that's what I would, I'll propose that motion to table it subject to those items.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. There's no discussion on a tabling motion. All in favor? Motion carries. 8A3, new website workflow management system, RFP-IT-2019-01. Manager of Information Systems, report number MIS 2019-01. Resolution reads that request for proposal submissions from eSolutions Group Limited be accepted for website redesign and implementation, RFP-IT-2019-01, in the amount of $139,500 plus HST of $18,135, for a total of $156,735, this being the most qualified proposal received that meets all requirements, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Any questions or comments? Mayor Panchuk.
Is
yes,
audience?
yes,
I wonder.
he is.
So I wonder if he can come up. The question I have, and I know it's somewhat in the report, but we want to make it very clear. I continue to get a lot of questions regarding e-commerce and the ability for people to, in a more user-friendly manner, be able to purchase and pay for the variety of services that the city has. So will this platform allow us to do it? So that's the first question. The second question is, as we look at continuing to modernize City Council, will this platform allow all the communication that we currently have on different parts of our websites to be able to do? I'm thinking more of an media playing capacity, that we can have it also on the city website, not just on the Facebook page or whatnot. Will that allow us to grow and to be able to deliver the services that we want in a modern way?
Through the chair to Mayor Panchuk, This solution is implemented by 450 municipalities. They've thought it through, and so absolutely it'll do e-commerce. It'll do e-commerce in areas that will cause us to review some of our processes. It's the intent of this. You know, when a purchase of a property is made, you know, how much of that can we have done through e-commerce? A simple thing like a yard sale. The nice thing is it's already built. They've built it for other municipalities. We just have to decide whether we want it. We want to put the effort into changing our processes to match it. It absolutely supports the social media platforms. It can push to other sites. The level of integration really is spectacular. And the company already wrote the purchasing software that we use successfully as a city, where a vendor logs onto our site, registers, and anytime there's a bid opportunity, they're informed of it. This is the same company that provided that. Our municipal app that we already have, Ping Street, that'll tell you when your garbage needs to be picked up, where you take your yard waste, and tracks all our news, et cetera, was written by the same company. So the integration points are very impressive. Even down to the point where council approved some information screens. The reason they haven't been deployed yet is once this website's in place, when we go on there and put, this is where the meetings are, these are the rooms, these are the events like a sewer, hydrant flushing, et cetera, it'll automatically propagate those screens. So it's a consistent message that's across all the platforms, but it really is spectacular. I mean, one of the nicest things about this process in particular is it's the first one that the technology committee went through. So we had the vast majority of directors in the room. We have their buy-in. They know that there's going to be an impact. They're supporting it wholeheartedly, and so it was just wonderful. So this will impact the entire city, and also gave everyone an opportunity to see what we're up against. This is a company that is producing for other communities some spectacular websites. They won 39 design awards in 2018 alone. So, and that's our competition. And so it was just wonderful to see everyone in the room. You know, this is part of the evolution of the city. That's how the big boys are playing, then that's how we're going to play too. And we're going to make sure we can compete on all platforms. And this is just an extension of that thinking.
Great, thank you very much. I can hardly wait.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Coyle. 8A4 Facade Improvement Program Transfer Reserve Funds. Principal Planners Report Number PP-2019-63. Resolution reads that pursuant to Principal's Planners Report Number PP-2019-63, the 2019 Facade Improvement Program operating budget be amended with an increase of $75,000 to be drawn from the Facade Reserve Fund to finance additional applications for 2019. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Williams. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just one. I'm very fortunate to chair this committee along with Councillor Williams is on the committee. This, you know, if you go back in history of this last 2 or 3 years, it's had great success. 138,000 in 2017, 202,000 in 2018, and we have more requests coming forward. We've already designated a number of programs. We got 2 more on today, and we got more coming, so I'd certainly ask that we consider transferring that funds.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to just understand the finances a little bit more. As I read the documents, I think we've spent $139,000 in 2017, $203,000 in 18, and we've got, if I understood it correctly, $190,000 committed now. Is that committed for this year and next, or is it all committed for in year?
Sure. Science?
The $190,000, I think, pertain to the previous year. These are applications that have come forward, but the funds haven't necessarily been dispersed. So the money is still remaining in the reserve fund to accommodate any of those future disbursements for applications that have already been approved.
Okay, and the second question, if I can, is what's a healthy amount in the reserve fund?
That depends on the nature of the reserve fund, obviously. I'd say $75,000 is what's being requested. There'll still be some money left over at the end of the year, so.
Yeah, but does it normally run with 0, or does it normally
No.
run with 100, or?
No, normally there's been money, there have been years where we haven't spent all of the money that council has approved in our operating budget for the program. And so we've taken that money every year and put it into the reserve fund so it's available for future years. This is, we've had an exceptional amount of activity in the last 2 to 3 years after we completed the downtown reconstruction. So there's been a lot more interest than there was for a number of years.
Mayor Pancher.
Ms. Hines was laughing, so I think it's a little bit of an unfair question for her in the sense of it depends on council's direction on this facade improvement plan. And I would encourage any businesses that are in the downtown area that are considering applications for this fund to do so quickly, because it is a council decision whether or not to continue this project. We have gone through a significant investment in downtown, and I'm happy to see that this year may set a record for single-use year of the facade funds. But there's no guarantee that we will continue to do this forever. We may decide that we have different criteria we want to use, or we have different parts of the city that we want to deal with, or we just want to stop doing this. All of those are there. So I'm not trying to alarm anyone, but I think the question of how much we should carry in that reserve account will depend on what the future council wants of the facade improvement program. Anyone who is thinking that they've seen the other businesses improve their facades and that maybe they should do it, I'd encourage them to do it sooner rather than later to ensure that funds are available.
Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just for clarity, there are no other current applications? I didn't bring my minutes with me. This is the only pending application?
I'll start with the chair of the committee.
Right now,
Councillor
today,
Dawson.
we got 2 applications. We either approve or disapprove today in our agenda. They're in consent items. And
Did I miss out?
according to staff, we have more applications that's going to be coming in. We're just going to set up the next meeting. And a little bit of background, when we did the Build Belleville project, we increased the amount that they were eligible for from 50% to either 65 or 75% funding. So it's made this certainly a lot more attractive. And if you notice downtown, there's a number of buildings that are doing facade improvement, and that's good for our downtown. The city spent $30-some million redoing our downtown, and the merchants now and the property owners are reacting to it and doing the fronts of their buildings. Some of them want to do the back of their buildings. So I think it's great for the city of Belleville, and as the mayor said, get your applications in.
Yep. Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to support this because there are other applications, and at this point in time, I don't know what they are or how much they're asking for, and this will leave nothing for the current year except $400. I would appreciate it if this could come back to the next meeting with that information.
No, you're...
No, this
I'm
will...
missing the...
Yeah, this transfer will actually accommodate these applications that are coming up later on.
Is that it?
Yeah, so in your consent agenda, there's
must have
2
missed it.
applications there.
Okay,
So
missed
we
it.
need to transfer in order
And I
to
admit
fund
that
this.
freely.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, to transfer.
Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor? The motion carries. 8A5, request for proposal to complete update of the review and consolidation of the City of Belleville's 3 comprehensive zoning bylaws. Manager Policy Planning Report Number PB-2019-60. Resolution reads that the proposal submission from Dillon Consulting Limited be accepted for consulting planning services for the undertaking of the review and consolidation of the City of Belleville's 3 comprehensive zoning bylaws in the cost amount of $159,770 plus $20,770.10 HST for a total dollar amount of $180,540.10, this being the most qualified proposal received, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Councillor Williams, Councillor Sandison. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Motion carries. 8A6, contract number TOS-2019-21, Rees Wicks Park parking lot paving. General Manager, Transportation and Operations Services, report number GMTOS-2019-20. Resolution reads that the request for tender from Fitzgibbon Construction Limited be accepted for contract number TOS-2019-21, Rees Wicks Park parking lot paving in the amount of $236,381.40 plus $30,729.58 HST for a total of $267,110.98. This being the lowest cost tender received, that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or comments? Oh, sorry, I got another part here. And the 2019 capital budget item 19-1-058 parking lot and trail paving be increased by $65,000 for a total amount of $265,000 to be funded from the capital levy reserve account. So Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, quick question, a question to Mr. Reid. Fabulous that this is coming to us. This total, it takes in all the entrances to Swix except the big parking lot at the soccer fields, is that right?
Mr. Reid.
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson. This does cover the entrance into West Swix, the four-way stop that's when you get there, part of the roadway that goes to the underneath the bridge, as well as going in about, I think it's maybe 15 meters into where the gravel parking lot is, and then all the way to where the new washrooms are, all new paving. This does exclude that gravel area for this year.
But does it go right into where the playground equipment is? Does that get resurfaced?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sandison, did I see your hand? Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Panchuk.
Yeah, thank you. First question I'd like to ask Manager Reid is, if we were to approve this, when does he anticipate commencement of this project? Is this a 2019 project or is it a 2020 project?
Mr. Reid.
Through the chair to Councillor or Mayor Panchuk, it will be done this fall.
Done this fall. Okay, so I wanted to ask that question because I have to preface my comments here. I cannot tell you how pleased, particularly Lions on the Bay, have been with the summer concert program this year. You know, we scrambled, and thanks to city staff and a difficult time earlier this winter, but we were able to get the washroom facilities ready. They opened on opening night. I fortunately I attended that night because I was expecting to see it open, but unfortunately we had miscommunicated amongst the different departments, Manager Reid's staff, particularly Tim Shaley, opened the washrooms that night. They swept out, there was a little bit of sawdust for it, but people used it. And it's been a wonderful addition to the park that we could use those facilities and have them open, as well as the rehab that was done on the previous washrooms that were built in 1967. So that has been going well. Our staff in that department have been noticeably, when the user group says improved, I take it with a grain of salt, but they have been much more focused on accommodating the needs of the people who are using that facility. And we've had a very busy summer in which we've had some distress because of the high water levels that cause us to have some issues. So, the park is doing what we expect from it. It's being used. It's a major focus point of the city. It reflects well on us. There's a number of things we'll do in the future, but one of the things that really is outstanding is that the entrance area and the parking lot is terrible. It has been that way for many years. And I'm happy to see that we're going to take action this fall. All the user groups will be happy with this. There is an increase in the budget amount that we have, but I think it's important to realize in the report it talks about some of the additional work that was done this year, not including this parking area, but it's coming out of this budget that needs part of the increase. But at the same time, this is very necessary for us as we go forward. So this is not the reason why I'm supporting this resolution, but I will point out that unrelated to this project, the same contractor is doing work for us at Parkdale Community, the entrance into the Parkdale Community area, which is the area for the new Field of Abilities. And we are now not just paving the area within our property, but also the entrance road coming in at a significant savings. So when you factor in the extra work that we did this year, plus the significant savings we have on that street, and the road leading into it is called Birch. The work that we're doing on Birch now as an entrance area going into which will be the new Field of Abilities, this is actually quite a good value for us, and I'm going to be supporting it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion carries. 8A7, Humane Wildlife Conflict Policy, Trapping Nuisance Animals. General Manager, Transportation Operations Services, report number GMTOS-2019-19. Resolution reads that pursuant to the General Manager, Transportation and Operations Services, report number GMTOS-2019-19, Council approved the Humane Wildlife Conflict Policy, Trapping of Nuisance Animals. Moved by Mayor Panchuk, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Questions or comments? Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, as I'm sure you would expect.
Yes,
I would have
I
comments.
was expecting.
As most of you know, I've been involved with this trapping of the beavers since it began back in last term. I've been involved, and I'm proud to say that under Manager Reid, under his guidance, I'm really proud to say how we have attempted to do everything we could to coexist with these beavers. Manager Reid, I do want to thank you. You've gone above and beyond, more than I could have expected. You've arranged training for our city staff. You've invited neighboring municipalities to make sure they're informed on how they can coexist with wildlife. You have imported Skip Lyle from Vermont, which resulted in 2 very successful applications of the beaver deceiver, one in Ward 1, one in Ward 2. They are working. They're working well. I do understand we need a wildlife policy. I wholeheartedly believe we will not need conibear traps, and I don't really believe we'll use them either at this point, as long as we have the Manager Reid here and the staff. My worry is not for today, it's for tomorrow. And I'm not going to be here forever, and Manager Reid isn't going to be here forever if we let him retire, that is. He's going to be going, and who's to say the interpretation of this wildlife policy will continue to be, treated the same way we're doing it today. I've read the policy, I've read it a few times. I can accept most of it, but I have a real issue with item 7, which speaks to the use of the up-to-date conibear kill traps. It's an item that goes to the heart of what I represent, and that is animal welfare and preservation, not only for wildlife, but for domesticated animals. And these traps can have an effect on both. We can have it both ways, I believe. I think we can do this with live traps. It's probably not the answer Manager Reid wants to hear right now, but I want to be able to get up tomorrow morning, and I want to look in the mirror, and I want to say that you did everything you could. You did everything you could to see the conibear live traps, number 7, in this policy. My vote against that tonight is my last stand on doing everything I could. I can live with this policy with the exception of item 7. And provided item 7 stays there, I cannot support it. Again, it's everybody's personal choice and decision I'm not here to, influence anyone. I'm just here to say that I think we can have it both ways. And I am going to take my last stand tonight, and I am going to say, I'm going to look myself tomorrow and say, I've done everything I can, and I'm voting against the Conibear death traps.
Other questions? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this policy. I don't know if everybody read the email that we all received from Ms. Fox from the Fur Bearers group from Vancouver. I'm happy to see that there's no support for a lot of what she had written, because an awful lot of it's, quite frankly, a lot of gibberish, but particularly where we have bias in the fact that 12 out of the 14 guidelines are specific to trapping. I believe that the policy goes out of its way to emphasize that unfortunately a fact of life is in dealing with such an industrious animal as the beaver, we're not going to solve this problem overnight by simply taking out a conibear trap from our policy. This is underscored as a last resort in trapping to ensure that captured animals are trapped as efficiently and humanely as possible. Because the underlying policy in Section 1 is the city shall strive to not interfere with wildlife in their natural processes where possible, and will strive to implement proactive and preventive measures in order to promote coexistence and to prevent potential conflicts where possible. We are taking pains, as the beaver deceiver has been effectively showing. Unfortunately, nobody likes to kill wildlife. I mean, we've come a long way from the day when we trapped these animals for hats. Let's face it. My grandfather trapped them for food, and he made a pretty good beaver stew, I should add, but I won't be eating that anytime soon. But I will support leaving that paragraph in. As unfortunate as it is, it's a fact of life that as a last resort, the occasional beaver must be taken care of. And conibear traps, yeah, they're brutal. They kill. That's the point of them. They kill as humanely as possible. I realize that some segments of the community will vilify me for supporting any of that, but through 60-some years on this planet, have come to believe that the beaver is a very industrious animal, and through our best efforts to save them wherever and however we can, and I believe this policy does that, as a last resort, we have to leave that arrow in the quiver of our staff, because it's necessary to protect property of the municipality and of private individuals. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I'm going to support the motion, because I think in number 4, where it says live traps shall be used before any other traps are used in the first step. And if you read through this here, we're using every precaution feasible for us until it gets to the point where we have no other recourse. And I truly believe it will be the last recourse the city will use, because as Councillor said before, Councillor McCaw, anyways, sorry, I can't get the names not coming out, but you know, when we look at the trapping, nobody wants to trap the beavers or kill them. But we got to make sure we look after our citizens. We got to look after our land. And when we brought in the people Mr. Reed brought in, the beaver bafflers and the beaver cones, they work wonderful in our community. I've seen them being put together, and the work they did. And I think as a city that certainly we are doing everything possible without getting to that last resort. And I hope we never have to get that last resort of using the conibear killing traps, because none of us really want that to happen. So I'm going to support the motion.
Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Manager Reid. This is the only solution. I'm sure you would have given us others if you had them, but what I know of these traps, they're not humane. Now, I respect everything you've done, everything you've done. I echo every word that Councillor McCaw said. And if I had not had the exposure to animal suffering that I've had through my years with the Humane Society, I wouldn't be as sensitive. And if I had any farming background, I wouldn't be as sensitive. And I admit that this is principle over legality. At heart, I feel that those houses that are being affected should never have been built there in the first place, but that's a long time ago and not within my grasp. It's very difficult when urbanization conflicts with wildlife. And I know you're very sensitive, and so are your staff. Last resort in trapping, I should have called you and asked you. Cone bear traps are not humane. Death by drowning for that type of animal with its air reservoir is not humane. A human will drown. It's a very long period of time to the human, but irrevocably, probably not a lot over a minute in complete submersion and inhalation. We know that from the documentary, it's probably closer to 15 minutes for the beaver. If I were to stop talking and we sat here for 15 minutes, it would impact us deeply. Nobody wants to be intentionally cruel. Is there any alternative? I would rather be shot, quite frankly, than be the beaver in the Kona bear trap. Okay. I guess we can't shoot them in the city, though.
Mr. Reid.
Unfortunately not. Through the chair to Councillor Colleen, I think we've all, I mean, I've done a lot of research on this and done a lot of stuff. And again, I don't think any one of us at this table wants us to go down that road. However, I use the analogy of, you know, when the police are involved and, you know, they're having to deal with individuals. And the reality is they want to, you know, obviously restrain the person as peacefully as possible. They want to restrain them, you know, and they have a taser there. And, you know, and the gun is the last resort, absolute. And this is kind of the same analogy in the fact that, you know, the last thing we want to go through mitigating measures. We want to look at ways to, you know, coexist in the first place, but we need to go steps. And this policy really outlines steps for staff to follow step by step, try to live trap, and then euthanize as needed, and then as a last resort. Because as Councillor Millett, they are a very industrious animal. And sometimes they are hard to capture. So unfortunately, I do believe it needs to be in there, especially when we're dealing with urban areas where, you know, unfortunately we can't use guns and so forth in the city limits.
If I may ask you one further question. Item 8, where trapping occurs in public areas, efforts will be made to have traps set and late evening traps removed. So there's no issue whatsoever with the leg hold type of thing that we had before. There's no, so what kind of trap, I guess I'm asking, are you referring to there?
Yeah, so the conibear are the ones that snaps on the animal. The leg hold traps are the ones that are the drowning traps.
There really isn't an alternative. I support Councillor McCaw completely in principle, and I have to agree with Councillor Millett in practicality, so I'll support the motion.
Any other, Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a couple of questions for Mr. Reid. Since the beaver deceiver came into play, can you kind of give us the 411 on the numbers throughout the course of a year, the nuisance beavers, or what the deal is with the beaver?
You know, in the past, the location of Hague Road was probably the hottest topic for beavers to be there all the time. It's a natural wetland that allowed it. Since we put the beaver deceiver in there, we haven't had any calls. They are living there and doing their thing, which is nice. And Boundary Road in the north end is the second location that we've got a location set up. So, and it's seemed to be working fine there as well.
And the number 7 that we're talking about, discussing the conibear killing traps, what do you do now? I mean, how often has that been used, or what do you do now with that really nuisance beaver? What's the measure you'll take?
Well, luckily, right now, we haven't had too many issues because we have installed the beaver deceiver, so it's been good. So again, if there's any new areas that do come up, you know, you got to think around the municipality. There are some wetlands that are natural habitat that they might kind of move into. Again, we'll go out and we'll evaluate the situation. You know, is it even an issue? And then look at building the beaver deceiver as required and see how that goes as a first result. There are other products out there like the beaver cone and so forth that that are tools in our toolbox that we can utilize as well if we depending on the situation.
So is it fair to say you haven't gone to this extreme yet?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I just looked at some pictures, Googled it, and I'm not a hunter or a trapper, and I guess I'm a softie, but it does look cruel and painful, and I'm really caught between a rock and a hard place here with this one, because I see the end result. You may have to use this, but it's good to hear that it hasn't gone that way with the city, and the beaver machine is working. So let's leave it at that.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Panchuk.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. You know, I've lived on the east end of the city for 18 years and walk that area. And prior to 1 year ago, I was not aware that we used those traps. And that, you know, I don't know how many, I would say dozens or hundreds of beavers over that time were destroyed and taken out using that technology. You know, last summer, early spring, or late spring, early summer, you know, I think, all of us on council were contacted, but I think that Councillor Boyce, Councillor McCaw, and myself at that time probably had the most involvement in speaking with, you know, everyone from our bylaw enforcement people who respond to complaints and deal with the animal control department, as well as Manager Reid in his department, and it was a surprise. And it was a surprise to I remember Councillor Boyce saying at that time, then Councillor Boyce, talking about the fact that he had been on council for 15 years and he wasn't aware that this practice was going on in our city. And, you know, when some residents found this and brought it to our attention, people sometimes ask, you know, like, what are you most proud of in terms of the things you've helped to do around the city? Is it this road you've done or whatnot? Well, one of the most proud things I am is that we brought a moratorium in last fall on this practice, brought attention to it. And the city of Belleville is now taking innovative steps to deal with coexistence of animals and humans, nature and our development. I was so happy, and I'm sure all of us came, but I was at the installation of the beaver deceiver with Councillor McCaw and Councillor Thompson. We were there, met the folks, had the great privilege of meeting a councillor from City of Kingston, and Councillor Oksana came, staff from all over Eastern Ontario that Manager Reid had invited in. They all came to see this new innovative style, which dealing with a very difficult problem, because we're restricted in what we can do. The relocation issue is the biggest problem when it comes to dealing with beavers in a habitat, and it's there. We're restricted, but here we have a innovative thing. As I walk my dog by the Hague Road, I'm interested. It's interesting, the conversations we have, the residents. I'm proud of the steps the city have taken. I'm proud of the attention that some of our residents who on their own have put together documentaries that have brought more attention to this and brought attention to what the city of Belleville has done to try to make it better, took a bad situation and made it better. So I'm proud of all that. That being said, we have to understand that today we have no policy. We have no policy whatsoever when it comes to dealing with any of this. This is a policy that's being proposed. Even the fur bearers have recognized that this is an important step, and they congratulate you for us. Is this policy perfect, or is it finished? Is it complete? Will it not be amended in the future? I don't believe at all. We will continue to use it. But I know that particularly when it comes to the urban part of Belleville, we will not be using these traps anymore. They're not just cruel and inhumane to the animals that are designed to be trapped, they're also cruel and humane to others that might find their way into them, that being pets and children. So the mistake would be for us not to pass the policy. I understand and I sympathize with my colleague, Councillor McCaw. You know, nobody has been a better advocate since I have been on City Council than her when it comes to the those that have no voice, and that's being animals. And I tip my hat to her. I am voting for this, understanding that Section 11 is in the policy, and I am looking forward to a day that we are going to amend it to remove it. We cannot do it today. I understand the restrictions that our staff have to have it, but I also know that it will be only as a last resort. But I hope in the not too distant future, we will be able to amend this policy to remove it, because we will find another item that we can use as a last resort that is not as bad as this. So I'll be voting for it. It doesn't mean that I support the use of conibear leg traps at all, but it means that this is a step, and I'm proud of the action that we've taken as a city on this.
Other questions or comments? I just will, from the chair, very briefly say that, you know, and it's been referred to, the policy talks about the least you know, proactive in terms of preventative measures, and I think that's the key. That's the policy. The guidelines are there, and Manager Reed referred to kind of a use of force, and I can relate to that in my other line of work. But the reality is you start out with the minimal amount, and you may never get to that point. But to not have that, you could run into difficulties, particularly with the infrastructure and the damage that can occur. I'm going to echo Mayor Panchuk, certainly commend Councillor McCaw for her diligent effort of bringing this forward time and time again and getting the policy where we are today. I know that she's referred to that it might not be right where she wants it to be, but it's to this point because of her efforts, and so hopefully she doesn't mind that centering out, but certainly a very good job there. So if there's no more comments, all in favor? That motion carries. 8A8, Recreation Subsidy Fee Assistance Program, Recreation Program Supervisors Report Number RPS-2019-03. Resolution reads that pursuant to the Recreation Program Supervisors Report Number RPS-2019-03, that the Recreation Program Subsidy Fee Assistance Policy be amended, as amended, be approved. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Williams. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
Just a quick question. On the, where it says on page 63, the subsidized spaces are used to help fill current programs. But if somebody applies right off the bat, we're not using this, they're not just having the chance to fill the programs at the end, they have a chance right from the start to enter the program.
So I have, Ms. Gerson's at the podium with council's consent. Ms. Gerson, if you want to just activate the microphone.
Thank you.
Did you hear the question?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Thompson. What happens is people can register at any point as long as they've been approved for subsidy, and with the new program, they can even register online.
Okay, so they have the first chance, the same as anybody else with the subsidy, to be registered for a program, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson, that is correct.
Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Hi, Tanya, thank you for coming. Thank you for this report. Are there sufficient people aware of it and applying?
Through the chair to, through the chair to Councillor Culhane, I believe so. We have a steady increase of applications every week. We have new clients coming in, so I believe that our customers are aware.
Well, I commend you, all of you, for what you do. You do a great deal with squeezing every possible benefit out of every dollar, and people who need the help, I'm sure, deeply appreciate it. It's a wonderful place. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. And just to answer my question, how do we market, you know, when people apply? It's a tough position, and I commend you. I think this is an excellent program, but it's tough when people are at the window or online to, you know, say, do you need assistance? How do we market this program to people who need it?
Through the chair to Councillor Williams. It is in our playbook, so as people are reviewing the programs that they can register for, they can see. We also have it on our website, and we also interact with our clients, and sometimes we notice the clients who might bring forward that things are too expensive or that they can't do everything. So our staff are trained on how to approach them and let them know that we do have a very simple application process.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Gerson. All in favor? Motion carries. 8B, consent items. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I do have Councillor Williams noting a conflict on 8B8 4.1 report, and Councillor McCaw has declared a conflict on 8B9. So I'll start with Councillor Millette. Any ones you want pulled?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, 8B3, 8B4, and 8B9, please.
Councillor Sanderson?
8B3, 8B4, 8B8, 8B9, 8B10, 8B13.
Councillor Williams?
8B1, 8B9.
Councillor Culhane?
Thank you. 8B3 and 4, and if I could just be put at the bottom of the list, my questions will likely be answered.
Have the gentleman at the end deactivate your microphones, or we're going to be at our capacity there. Thank you. Mayor Panchak?
No, thank you.
Councillor Kelly?
No, thank you.
Councillor McCaw? Councillor Thompson?
No, thank you.
So all the items, bear with me here. I had an over-under and I think I lost. Not good. Okay, so that the following agenda items be approved with the exception of item 8B1, 8B3, 8B4, 8B8, 8B9, 8B10, 8B13. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Williams. All in favor? Motion's carried. So let me go back to 8B1, Primary Care Task Team Update, Chief Administrative Officer's Report Number CAO-2019-03. Resolution reads that the Chief Administrative Officer's Report Number CAO-2019-03, Primary Care Task Team Update be received. Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Mayor Panchak. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. And I know this was a staff report asked for on July 8th. We're right or wrong. We had a lot of discussion around nurse practitioners, but healthcare in general. And I asked for the staff report because, we've seen ourselves in a crisis. I consider we have three main crises in the city right now, one being healthcare, one being housing, and the other being skilled labor. And this was something that I wanted just to have a little look through the staff lens to see what we're doing. And right now, we understand that healthcare is a provincial problem. It's something that the province is responsible for, and municipalities have been forced to get into the debate of that. And we spend in 4 years over $1 million of taxpayer dollars, municipal taxpayer dollars, on healthcare, and our program is phenomenal. We do a fantastic job recruiting doctors, and Karen Post has done a great job, and the mayor's been involved, and the whole city, and we've attracted a lot of doctors. And the idea was to start looking at another alternative, which was nurse practitioners who have now been granted full scope, who can take on patients just like doctors can. And again, it's something that we wanted to have a look at. I understand that since talking about that on July 8th, the city's been involved in talking to nurse practitioners. And my request for a staff report was to whether the city, through a task team that could form until 90% of our residents had primary health care provider. And I understand with the staff report, we do have some things that are happening confidentially with nurse practitioners and continue to develop that. And I think that's great, and that's great news to hear that. My question through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Bove, what I would foresee, and I'm not stating now, but in the future, and I respect the report and how it's written, is that we have a task team that's developed that may include maybe a doctor, maybe a nurse practitioner, maybe some constituents, and maybe up to 2 from council who can continue to work. Would that be of benefit to the city of Belleville to have that kind of team that would utilize the resources which are already stretched to work with the city from council's perspective in order to continue to look at this crisis situation?
Mr. Bove?
Through the chair to Councillor Williams, I think it could certainly have a place. Obviously, staff support is a key thing to any group, whether it's a committee or a task force, as you've phrased it. So, we don't want to take away staff time from, efforts that are currently underway as far as the doctor recruitment program. Certainly, we can look at expanding that doctor recruitment program to other avenues such as nurse practitioners. I think some of the negotiations that are going on will help provide some clarity to that as we go forward. And I think when we're able to bring something back to council, that would be the time maybe to consider whether we need to move and create the task team as you talked about. So.
And appreciate your efforts. And again, I think the city of Belleville is doing a phenomenal job. I think it's leading the way in this province in terms of what's happening and how we're able to attract and retain doctors. Again, the idea of nurse practitioners was another option, and I feel good that we've looked at it, that we've been talking to them. So I think at this point I'm happy with where we're at. I think there's a lot of work to do. We are in a crisis, and I look forward to continuing to look at that down the road.
Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a clarification, if I may. Councillor Williams, it's my understanding that nurse practitioners cannot practice independently in this province, correct?
No, it's not correct. They can practice independently now. They've been granted that scope.
When did that happen?
That happened earlier this year.
Well, I'm sorry, but we'll need to discuss this after the meeting.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Panchar.
Thank you. Well, again, part of, I think, Councillor Culhane's question has got to do with the role and oversight, and some things have changed, but some things still are similar. I guess I wasn't going to say anything on this, but I do want to say, because any suggestion, like I'm hearing a suggestion that suddenly now we're having conversations with nurse practitioners as of the July 8th meeting, and that's just not the case. We've had many years and many councils who have been working on all aspects of healthcare, including with nurse practitioners. We assisted with getting the first nurse practitioner-led clinic here in Belleville, and I know the previous mayor, Mayor Christopher, was involved with negotiations to assist with their relocation and getting their new site, and we've had many discussions on everything, including nurse practitioners. I have had meetings on the issue of nurse practitioners since the beginning of my term, which was back in January, or December. We had meetings in January on this. I have met with doctors, with nurses, with hospital administrators, with MPPs, and with ministers regarding the healthcare, the lack of healthcare services that are sufficient for our region, and will continue to do so. But I think the unfortunate thing with this process here is that it's being suggested that we weren't doing it, simply because we can't talk about negotiations that are important to be kept confidential because of the vulnerability of us being able to have success going forward. Doesn't mean that city council, doesn't mean that the city staff, doesn't mean that us and our partners are not working on this. And so I just want to clarify that this is part of our ongoing work, and unless council makes a decision in our budgeting of where we put resources towards, right now the only healthcare resources we provide are through grants to the hospital foundations and through the doctor recruitment program. And if council wants to make a change in that, we can. Up until then, we'll continue to work on solutions, and if we're successful and have a need for funding, we'll come back to council at that time. But certainly we're not going to negotiate in open session and on public, on the floor of our council chambers. But rest assured, I hope everyone in the city understands that all of council is interested in the issue of healthcare and all parts of our healthcare, and we will work on this throughout the entire term. It's one of our top priorities.
Other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion's carried. 8B3 Facade Improvement Program, proposed grant allocation for 293 Front Street, Belleville, Ontario. Principal Planners Report number PP-2019-61. The resolution reads that the grant allocation for 293 Front Street recommended by the Facade Improvement Committee as set out in report number PP-2019-61. Facade Improvement Program proposed grant allocation for 293 Front Street, Belleville, Ontario, be approved, subject to all the requirements of the Facade Improvement Committee, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the commitment agreement with the grant recipient on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. I have a few that are interested. Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, I had said I was interested in 8B4 as well. It's 8B3 that I have my question on, and through you to Mr. Deming, I guess, on page 4 of 8B3, the recommended improvements include install security light with camera. I fail to see how that's a security or a facade improvement. And are we now going to go down the road of installing security lights, cameras? Next, we'll be asking to do alarm systems. It's not a big portion of the overall item, but I just didn't know if that fell into our criteria, and perhaps Chair Thompson might be able to explain as well. But I just feel that $213.85 for a light fixture, I mean, security light with camera I don't think fits facade.
All right, Mr. Deming is in the audience. Mr. Deming, you heard the question?
Through the chair to Councillor Millette. The committee did discuss that at length. The overall opinion in the end was that it would improve the sense of space for the area, and that would help contribute to the facade improvement of it. Again, it's not a natural traditional light that's being installed that doesn't fit the guidelines. It was more of the overall effect it would have on the facade.
I'm not sure I'm still sold,
No, Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, through the chair, I had the same concern that we're basically opening up the sluice gates on this thing. When you start to consider installing security lights and cameras as an improvement to a facade, I think it's out of bounds. So I won't support it as written.
Okay, the CEO has a couple comments.
Just to clarify, the committee and through their mandate, through their program, has a number of guidelines. Lighting is part of that, so you will notice several of the facades on Front Street and their upgrades include lighting. This particular one fits that because it is lighting. I think it's unfortunate it just happens to have also that security camera part attached to it, but lighting is definitely part of what the committee works towards, because it assists in showing off facades, not just during the daytime, but obviously the lighting helps at night. So it's definitely part of the program, and in this case, it fits the guidelines.
Councillor Sanders, nothing further. Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought my question, which was the same, would be answered through the discussion. It has been, and I'll take the recommendation. I'll support the motion.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Just as part of the committee, we looked at that situation because of the lights, but under the facade program, lighting is part of it. This is just one form, you know, and the security camera is part of it, but it does enhance the back of that piece of the property. It is very visible from Victoria Street coming down, and with the painting the walls at the back, it really just enhances that part of the building and the facade program, and it does fall under the program of lighting.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through the chair, enjoying the conversation and the discussion. When we look at these requests, they do follow the program, or at least the criteria for the committee, and the program has funding. We've invested heavily in the downtown core in the last several years with the new look, and I know Councillor Millette made a reference to the security light with camera, and what's next? Is it a doorknob with keychains? And but I just you know, I disagree with that. I'm going to support this because it is continuing with what the goal is to downtown, to enhance that, to make it a not just a daytime, at nighttime. Those lights. We saw the success this summer with some events, and I'm in the downtown core lots. There seems to be a vibe down there, some great energy. We had the Arts Council here present tonight. We know what the DBIA is doing. Why stop? This fits the mandate. I'm going to support it.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, through the chair. So appreciate the clarification on the lighting. And if I understood that discussion, the security camera doesn't apply. So that doesn't fit within the guideline. Is that correct?
Mr. Bove.
I don't know if the camera itself, from my understanding, the camera is part of the light fixture. So it's all connected together.
So you could obtain other lighting without a security camera and get the illuminated effect that everybody's talking about, yes?
No doubt, yes.
Councillor Williams next.
And I wasn't at this meeting, I was away from this meeting, but I do, I've read the report and I understand the discussion. I think a lot of times we're seeing some of these reports and we're going through them. I think sometimes we have some things written in the program that I think council disagrees with. And what I'm going to recommend is when we get the time through the end of the year, we revisit the policy and facade, not only just the budget, but the policy itself. I think some of the policy is written in a way that we're getting applications and they're correct, but sometimes they're not fitting what the spirit of council is. So I think we should revisit that. I do, I'm not sure, and I would agree that a security system should not be part, but if the light fixture itself is part of the facade application, then definitely I can see why that was supported.
Councillor Millette.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity one last time, Mr. Chair. You know what, I've heard the explanations. I'm not here to parse fly poop from pepper. If the security camera happens to be in conjunction with the light, and the back wall of this, indeed, as people coming down Victoria, lighting's going to be an issue there. I'm going to support it. And again, it's not a lot of money, but I think we've got to be vigilant that, again, we're not outstepping the constraints of the policy itself when we get into things like security. So, thank you.
Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to comment to Mr. Deming and Councillor Thompson, members of that committee. Excellent committee, and you can see consistent change down the main street, and clearly now there will be down Victoria Avenue because the rear ends of these buildings are very visible. So congratulations, everybody.
Okay, we put a lot of light on this subject. All in favor? Motion carries. 8B4, Facade Improvement Program, proposed grant allocation for 200 Front Street, Belleville, Ontario. Principal Planners Report number PP-2019-62. The resolution reads that the grant allocation for 200 Front Street recommended by the Facade Improvement Committee as set out in report number PP-2019-62, Facade Improvement Program, proposed grant allocation for 200 Front Street, Belleville, Ontario be approved subject to the requirements of the Facade Improvement Committee, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the commitment agreement with the grant recipient on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. I have Councillor Sanderson. Do you wish to move that motion? Okay, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. So, to make sure I don't cast the wrong light on this, I totally support the facade improvement program, and earlier voted to support increasing it by 75,000 to transferring it from one account to the other. So what I am, as I was on the previous application, when I read replace rotted door and frame, what comes to my mind is that, isn't that part of just general maintenance of your own facility? And so that's what drew my attention to this one.
Mr. Deming, do you want to make a comment on that? Or?
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Sanderson, it is a part of the program for restoration of the original building. The frame itself is on the exterior of the facade as well as the door. As long as it's not an actual structural change, then it falls within the mandate of the program.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Culhane has withdrawn her comment for that one. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support the recommendation. This, however, whatever your opinion of this building is, and mine has never been terribly complimentary. I think it's a white elephant at the four corners in a city that historically has some fabulous aspects. But be as it may, that building was built. It needs improvements, and again, this is a showcase intersection in the city, and anything that can be done to improve it. It's a big price tag, 17,000 plus, but I will support it. And again, anything that can make that intersection and that put a little lipstick on this piggy here is much welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just this building is an important part of our community. It's right down at the four corners. And talking to a couple of the people that are renting in there now, there's rumbles out there that the lower part is maybe in order of being rented, and by two different tenants in the lower part, if that's possible. And it's in the four corners of the downtown, and it's going to make improvements to the building itself. And I think it's, with this improvement here, it's going to enhance the corner of Front Street and Bridge Street, and I ask for your support.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion carries. 8B8 City of Belleville Grant Committee. Councillor Williams has declared a conflict on 4.1 in that report, so I'm going to deal with that first. So page 28 of your agenda and consent items. 4.1, so we're in the Grant Committee. Food for Thought Quinte, Food for Thought event, Suicide Prevention Day, and they've requested municipal-owned facility, waive of rental fees, support of municipal staff, and use of municipally owned equipment, materials, electrical hookup, water facilities, portable toilets. So I get a mover for that. Mayor Panchuk, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Motion's carried. I'll bring Councillor Williams back for the remainder. Okay, so we dealt with 4.1. So we have City of Belleville Grant Committee Director of Finance Treasurer's Report number DF-2019-26. The resolution reads that Council approve the recommendations of the Grant Committee for those applications outlined in the Director of Finance Treasurer's Report number DF-2019-26. And I'm going to put in there except for 4.1, City of Belleville Grant Committee. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. So on, the only reason I brought it up is 4.6, which states Bay of Quinte Pipe and Drums. And I think last month, I think it was renamed City of Belleville Pipe and Drums, or Pipes and Drums, sorry. So I think we should just make that correction.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I'm just going to take the opportunity, colleagues here, just to point out 5.1. So the Community Arts and Culture Fund Review team met, and we were able to re-review some applications as per the guidelines, and everyone confirmed the missing information by the city-imposed deadline. So the allocations that are outlined in the minutes will go out to those organizations. So just wanted to make that point there. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion's carried. 8B9, Councillor McCaw's declared a conflict. It's Quinte Humane Society funding options for new facility, capital campaign, Director of Finance Treasurer's Report number DF-2019-27. Resolution reads that the Director of Finance Treasurer's Report number DF-2019-27, Quinte Humane Society funding options for new facility, capital campaign be received. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Millette. Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, through the chair. So I'd like to make an amendment to the recommendation that it be received and forwarded to the operating budget for consideration. So I could have a seconder to that? Mayor Payne-Chuck?
If Councillor Millette will agree to that, it can be a friendly amendment. Okay, so it's as friendly amended. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Sanderson?
Yeah, I think when this was first brought before council, council did make a significant contribution in the terms of $400,000. The discussion really came around the time frame. We were spreading it over 8 years. And I certainly felt that we needed to step that up to something close to $1 million to be able to help the initiative. The proposals that the treasurer has brought forward does show us a couple of options that could step it up, one to $750 and one to $1 million, but it would still have to come forward through the operating budget cycle. There's also been some discussion in terms of how the city might be able to assist in other ways to offset some of the financial costs of building the structure. What I'd like to see, not from the city, but from the Humane Society, is I would like to see their plan to raise funds so that we can gauge how far along they are in terms of knowing when our contribution will be required. Because for us to lock up the money, but for them not to be able to utilize it, is sort of self-defeating, both for them and for us. So I don't know if that's something that staff can request from the Humane Society, that we get an update on how their funding is proceeding. Thank you.
So, Councillor Sanderson, the city clerk's making note of that, and as we refer this into the operating budget, we can make note of that request and have that information included, so council will have a totality to look at. Okay?
Thank you.
Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just commenting on behalf of the Humane Society, I'm no longer part of the organization. I'm strictly a volunteer. I do understand that the process they're undertaking, the capital fundraising, the campaign has not yet gone fully public. Every municipality, no matter how small, in the catchment area from here to Cherry Valley and to Bancroft and to Napanee and including Trenton, because we take animals, or they take animals, from that entire catchment area. We understand, at least it's our take, that this government wants regional undertakings. They want people to collaborate. They want people to merge services. They want regional. Therefore, the undertaking has to be regional. the fundraising committee, the chair of the board, our executive director, the fundraiser, have gone before Trenton and been favorably received. They've come before Belleville and been favorably received. Unfortunately, didn't have quite that reception in Picton, but we'll ask again. The difficulty is, if this is not successful, I don't know where the animals are going to go. And I understand from sitting in this chair, hospice is vital, healthcare is vital. It's another hard choice. It may be some time before anyone attempts the initiative, and that building will be shut. That, it cannot be resuscitated much further. It will be shut. So those are my observations from being part of the initiative from the changing of the board 6, 7 years ago and watching the struggle. I commend everyone who's been involved. It is a very important undertaking. If you're listening and you love animals, reach out to the Humane Society. Thank you.
I have Councillor Millette first. No? Okay, Councillor Williams.
Thank you through the chair, and I think this is an incredibly important, initiative for the city. You know, I think with asking for finance, it's also, well, we've had deputations in the past, but having a deputation on the fundraising goal and the plan for that, I think there should be a launch of it. And I think the city, you know, we need to be able to be some kind of a partner in this, but with tangible goals. And I think a goal from my mind would be, in hearing from the Humane Society, and I know Mr. Rocket's in the audience, and I met with him today for a little while, I would like to see personally, and this is just my opinion, but a Humane Society that is in another facility within 2 years. So by the end of December 2021. So whatever fundraising happens and how that works, you want to make sure it's tangible, meaning that we can work somehow, some way to make sure that's the goal. If we just look at money and we wait 8 years later and say, where's the Humane Society? Or as Councillor Culhane said, to get to a point where we don't have a Humane Society, something's shut down, I think that's a situation nobody wants to be in. So to that end, I'm just asking that when we work together as partners, that we bring any and all options to the table, which may mean different ways in which we can partner to collaborate to get the goal where we have a new Humane Society shelter. And I think that's got to be the goal. And I would just ask that we all come together to make sure that there's all different options. I think fundraising, we're going to be able to find out very quickly how much can be raised, but I don't think always it's going to be what we want. But I think we just want options, want to make sure that we're coming to the table and that we have a new building in the city of Belleville, and I think that's what's going to benefit everyone. So that's what I'd like to see.
Mayor Panchuk.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea by Councillor Sanderson to have this go to budget, and I know what the clerk has written down, and I think that probably we should allocate some in-camera time to have the Humane Society come in and present us with their financial plans. I know they already talked about what their goal was, but I think what you're asking for is a little bit more of an understanding of how achievable those goals are and how they plan on dealing with it. And again, that's a discussion that we should have in our in-camera session so we can go with it. But let me just remind everyone watching at home and perhaps some of us around the table, the reason why we made the commitment we made now to the Humane Society was because as they go to other municipalities and ask for assistance, they wanted to know that the city of Belleville had stepped up and had made a commitment. We've done that. That was the intention of our announcement earlier this year, and that was what was requested of us. We are so far the largest contributing municipality. I think the largest contributor to this project, but certainly the largest contributing municipality. And I look forward to everyone else getting on. Fundamentally, there are other things that we can do to try to assist. I offered those at the time that we made the decision in terms of helping with their servicing. Helping get donations from some of the developers in the area that might be able to reduce some of their costs. And Councillor Sanderson's idea about are there other ways that we can look at making contributions. You know, if we can find a way to shorten the window from 8 years to a lesser amount, absolutely, you know, and we will see. The reason why we this was what we were sure we could do at the time that we made the commitment. If circumstances should change that we can do more in terms of quicker, then everyone around the table, I'm sure, is going to support that. You know, but at the end of the day, the Humane Society facility will not be a City of Belleville facility, will not be an asset, it will not be on our property. It'll be the way that the Society's Act requires them to behave, or to operate, I should say. And we will respect that. And so I think before operating budget, we will have them come into an in-camera session where we can have a full discussion about that. And I think the idea of making suggestions are a good one. But I also think that the suggestion I made earlier this year, which was that we should look at scalability of this facility, then perhaps not all of it will be done in the first go-around, the first level of construction, that it can continue to go on, get open, because we're in desperate conditions at the existing facility. Move to a new facility, construct it to a point, and then be able to add on to it later on. That may be the best way, but certainly, you know, we want to work collaboratively with them. It's an essential service for our community, because if they did not provide the service they do to the City of Belleville, we would have to pay more to have another community provide that service. So we all get it. And sometime before operating budget, which will be in April, I believe we sent out the schedule for it. We will have an in-camera meeting where we can discuss it with the Humane Society.
Okay, any further questions? All in favor of the motion as amended? Oh, carried. Councillor McCaw back. AB10 Investment Policy Quarterly Report, Accounting Coordinator's Report Number AC-2019-04. Resolution reads that the Accounting Coordinator's Report Number AC-2019-04, Investment Policy Quarterly Report be received. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Mayor Panchuk. Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, through the chair to Treasurer Hines. In the analysis, I had a little difficulty understanding it. So, did we lose market value $6 million on our investments? Did it go from 85 million to 79 million?
Ms. Hines.
And while you're considering that, I was looking at the investments are stated at cost rather than at market value. And I'm just wondering what the reason would be for that.
Okay, so on the second page, it identifies the investments at cost. So you can see that at December 31st, 2018, our investments at cost were $85,532,270.67. And at the end of June, there's $78,851,512.28. The $85,078,562.42 refers to the market value of investments at the end of December 31st, 2008. So you would compare that 85 million to the 85.5 million in cost that's shown on page 2. We have a market value of $79,080,719.19 at the end of June 2019, compared to our value at cost of $79,819,986.85. So there is a difference between the cost and market at both dates. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's minimal.
It is minimal. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there may be a different way that we can present the tables in the report in the future that would be
No, it was probably me.
A bit clearer.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion carries. 8B13, roof replacement and/or modifications, various locations. Acting Property Manager's Report Number APM-2019-03. The resolution reads that the tender...
Move as written.
Oh, thank you very much. Moved by Councillor McCaw. He caught my pause there, good. Seconded by Councillor Culhane. Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Director Reid. Just wondering why General Manager Reid, Wondering why the dome at Walber's Loyalist was taken off the list.
Okay, Mr. McGlashan's actually, I'm being told, is here. Don't worry, the city clerk keeps track of everybody.
Through the chair to council, we went through a process where we evaluate all the roofs on a yearly basis. The dome was identified as one of the roofs to be replaced. Based on consultation with the departments, we didn't feel that it's a good investment because there's potential for the reconfiguration of buildings and things like that at that site down the road. So instead of investing that kind of dollars and potentially changing something down the road, it didn't seem like a good use of dollars.
It was by choice, it wasn't, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Millette.
Yes, while we have Mr. McGlashan at the podium through you, Mr. Chair, I see the Tom Gavey Pavilion is on for 27,000 plus. Is that a steel roof? What's the status of that roof, and what is what's the issue with that roof?
Through the chair to council, there is a steel roof or metal roof on that building. There's golden pine planks underneath it. When they installed the roof, the screws were installed on the flats, which you can do in some cases, but they tend to leak down the road. It has rotted through in several spots, so the cost is to replace the metal roof with some substrate materials and to replace some of the rotted planks at the same time.
Okay, thank you. That's a very heavily used facility, and it's named after a very near and dear friend of ours, so I just had a question on that. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, motion's carried. 8C, council information matters. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor McCaw.
No, thanks.
Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
Mayor Panchak.
No, thank you.
Councillor Culhane. Councillor Williams.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Millette.
No, thank you.
All right. So I get a motion that those items be received. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? Motion's carried. I get a motion to rise and report. Councillor Williams, Councillor Culhane, all in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Bylaws, first reading of bylaws, and if I can, I'll just read the numbers. First reading of bylaws 2019-160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167, 168, and 169. And I note that we're only giving first reading to 169. Motion to approve them, Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2019-160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167, and 168. Let's get on the floor. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Any discussion on any of those bylaws? Councillor Sanderson. If you can identify which bylaw you want to discuss, and then...
Yeah, so it's bylaw 2019-160, which is the roundabout.
Sorry, 2019-...
160.
Okay, thank you. The first, yeah.
And that's the
roundabout one, yes.
So I noticed in the document it doesn't make any reference to signaling while exiting the roundabout. And I'm just wondering if that's something that we should be incorporating or not. Thank you.
It's a good question. And it's even a better question of who do we direct that to. Thank you. Acting Director Ford, welcome and congratulations on your new title.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you to Councillor Sanderson, with the the bylaw revisions that we put in front of council are based on a review of other municipalities that have adopted and implemented roundabouts. And we didn't come across any other municipal bylaws that reference the need to signal. I believe the need to signal the entering and exiting a traffic roundabout would be covered under the Highway Traffic Act, if anywhere else, not necessarily within the specific municipal bylaws dealing with traffic matters.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on that or any other bylaws? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And third and final reading of bylaws number 2019-160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167, and 168. Moved by Councillor Standison, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor? It's carried. And I'll just point out, again, we did only first reading of bylaw 2019-169, which is a bylaw to regulate the operation of all-terrain vehicles on municipal highways within the city of Belleville in order to be able to circulate this to the community and receive feedback from that. And so you will see either an amended version if it comes back from the committee that way after the feedback, or then we'll proceed with second and third reading of it. New business. Okay. I'll start with Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Worship. At this time, I would like to request a staff report be prepared for the next council meeting on the Intel building downtown, on the state of it, and just whether there's any recourse for the city of Belleville on that particular building, the Intel building.
Okay. Councillor Thompson, would it be okay if we got a report from the chief building official regarding the current status of compliance to the previously issued orders? Is that what you're looking
Yes.
for?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's good. So
No, that's good.
We can
No.
get that for you. No problem.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
And the second item I have we as a city looked at the future for in from the cold, just in case the new facility isn't open on time comes winter time? Because I know last time we used the library, then we switched to the transit building. Have we been looking at the feasibility in the future? Because the transit building is going to be under repair. So I'd like to make note that we at least make sure that we making provisions on case the in from the cold isn't open.
Yeah. So you're talking about the Grace Inn shelter?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because I believe the In from the Cold meal program will be starting here shortly. And
Sorry, I didn't mean in from the cold.
What I can tell you,
Sorry.
and then if you want further action, we can look at it. I can tell you, Councillor Thompson, that I had a meeting with Aaron Rivers and Dino from Hastings County approximately a month ago,
Yes.
in which we discussed not just the general delivery of services they have for homelessness, but also what would happen if Grace Inn was not open by the November deadline that we had previously put in place. And subsequent to that, we now have heard that their launch date is December the 3rd, I believe, or 4th. I have a meeting with Chief McDonald, who is in charge of our emergency control group, and we are going to be discussing the overnight warming center in the month of November, if it's necessary, prior to Grace Inn opening. And we will also be discussing about two issues. First of all, if Grace Inn should not open on time, we hope they do.
Yep.
But if they didn't, what would we take in place? But also we'll be discussing overflow. If Grace Inn should be at capacity, or if there are people who are not able to be admitted to the Grace Inn shelter during the periods of extreme cold that we would open our overnight warming center,
Yes.
we'll be talking about what our steps should be. So is that sufficient for your information, or do you want something else?
Yeah, I'd just like to have a report back so that we have that information available to us, so that we cover that situation, so everybody knows ahead of time that if Grace Inn doesn't open, or if there is an overflow, that we have a place for them. Because I was approached just the other day about somebody, what happens if it gets overflowed, where are they going to stay? And if Grace unfortunately doesn't open in time, where can we put these people? So if I could have a staff report come forward the next meeting, if I may.
Okay, just give me one quick second, please. Do you know when our meeting is? Oh, I have a hard time keeping track of everything. My meeting with the chief is tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And so I will meet with him tomorrow, and then what we'll do is we'll have the chief prepare a report for the next council meeting
Very good.
with whatever direction we have or suggestions we have or items that we need a decision from council on. Is that good? Okay.
No, that's good. I think it's important we plan for the future because we know we have the situation with homeless and feeding the people and so on. So thank you very much.
Great minds think alike. Thank you. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. I was looking for a staff report from Manager Reed's department regarding installation of 3 fenced dog areas / parks. In one of our committee meetings, we had discussed, it was our Gateway Signage Committee, and what that is it's a Christmas light display, but we're also talking about gateway signage. In that particular meeting, we had discussed the idea of how do we attract people into the city. So we talked about it amongst ourselves at the idea of driving people off of the 401 into our city, and a great way to do that would be to provide a dog park for people who are traveling by. If we could bring them in, they have a place they can have a rest, their dogs can run. So I was asking for a staff report from number 1, the Jack Russell Scott Park or part of East Swix. The reason I say part of East Swix is because I'm concerned about potential flooding of the Moira along the Jack Russell Scott Park. So that might be something that could be included in the report. The second location would be the eastern part of Potters Creek Park, and the third location, Settlers Ridge Park. If possible, I'd like the staff report with cost to include additional tree plantings in the residential areas to act as buffers and perhaps shade too. I did spend some time in the Potters Creek Park, and it could use some trees, but there is an area that I can see to the east, not a large dog park, but at least a dog run where people can go and let their dogs run, as opposed to, I mean, there are a lot of seniors in the area who can't really walk their dogs very well. So I think that might be a nice addition to the Potters Creek area. Hoping that this can come forward so that we can maybe have some consideration in capital budget.
Yeah, okay. Director McDonald, you've got what you need from that? Okay, good. All right, thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mayor Panchuk. And just very briefly, I know we're going to be talking about ATVs on another day, but there's residents that continue to use the green space in Caniff Mills along the pipeline and are using ATVs. And I can't be clear enough, and I think we'll send some messaging out, and there's some signage on order. It is prohibited from using an ATV in that green space. It is city property. There seems to be a lot of racing around, and some residents have expressed some concerns, and I just actually received an email not too long ago this evening expressing some more concerns of that. So we do have signage coming, but and we'll get that message out, but I wanted to articulate that ATVs are prohibited in any green space in the city, including that one, which continues to be very popular and inappropriately used.
Just before you move on with, do you have anything else?
No.
No, I think you raised a great point, Councillor Carr, and it's not just in that part of the city that we're experiencing these problems with drainage areas and green space. And I know that the Belleville Police Service are the ones that do the enforcement of improper vehicles in those areas, but I think we have a citywide issue, particularly in areas of new development. Where the land has been leveled, and then it takes a while for the communities to be built up. So, can I ask, when's the next meeting of the Transportation Committee?
I'm just trying to get hold of Christine. She's been on holidays, and we're going to set she's back tomorrow, and we'll set the next Traffic Committee meeting fairly quickly.
Can I just, I could send a letter, I guess, but while I've got you here, can I ask that the committee consider not with the Belleville Police Service reps, not the ATV bylaw itself, but the enforcement issues of the bylaw and what challenges the Belleville Police Service may have and any recommendations they have for us to assist with that. Because again, I think as the city continues to grow, we will just move this problem from area to area, but we will continue to have it. And I know that is technically a transportation related issue, and your committee has done a great job bringing forth this bylaw. But I think Director McDonald will have a memo for your committee asking you to have a discussion about the enforcement of that bylaw.
Thank you very much, Worship.
Thank you.
And we'll receive that, and I would presume the next meeting will be within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. About a month ago, we were in Ottawa at the, some of us anyway, were at the AMO conference, and there were 43 exhibits, and they're very impressive, thinking outside of the box. Many of them are innovative, and on one of the working lunches, I want to get that in working lunches, we had a group from Quebec and Toronto present to us called Bus Patrol, and I was really interested in what this company had to offer. Being a former trustee, I know how important a son or daughter's safety to and from school is for parents. So I did some research on buses in Ontario, and I want to share some of the numbers. 18,000 school buses in Ontario daily, taking 800,000 kids to school. Locally, with the Tri-Board Bus Company out of Napanee, 636 buses, and 30,000 students depend on those buses to get to school and home safely daily. In Belleville, thousands of students, and there's 100 buses daily on a school day that are around our city limits taking kids to school. So today I invited the folks from Bus Patrol. They came from Montreal and Toronto, and they met with Deputy Chief Mike Callahan. We had from Tri-Board today Gord Taylor and Nicole Auberton. Mayor Mitch Panchik was there, Matt McDonald, City Clerk, and Councillor Bill Sanderson came because he's also the Chair of Transit. But a good conversation. And as Deputy Chief Mike Callahan said, if safety is our priority and we can do a better job for your son or daughter getting to school safer, this is an added tool that the city should seriously look at. So how it works, it's called, it's the cameras on the side of a bus, and they call it stop arm camera technology. So on an average day in Ontario in municipalities, there's 2.5 blow-bys where people go by the bus and put that student in a potential way that they could get seriously hurt. So this is technology. We're meeting with them again. And what I'd like to see, and we looked at the business model today, we saw the video, the slides, very successful down in the United States. Ottawa did a test pilot for 2 buses. Now they're up to 6 in Ottawa. It's starting to gain traction in the Niagara area, Barrie up in Northern Ontario, and Quebec is also running with Bus Patrol. So there's stop arm camera technology. They will make a difference. And I'd like to ask the city to see if we can get a staff report how we can implement this Bus Patrol technology into on buses with the city of Belleville to make our kids safer getting to school and from. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent suggestion, Councillor Kelly. That's 2.5 blow-bys per bus per day.
Yeah.
Which means in the city of Belleville, we have approximately 250 incidents where people are illegally passing school buses in our city, which is an unacceptable safety risk, one which is entirely preventable. And so, you know, we will get you that information. I'm very keen on that technology, and the province is going through regulations, not just on this item, but also with respect to municipalities introducing photo radar in limited areas and red light cameras. And that innovative use of technology going forward is the future for us. But when it comes to school buses, you know, this is something that's definitely good. So thank you very much for bringing that forward. On the left side, anyone there for new business? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the first thing I'd like to bring up, because nobody else has, is the roundabout, as I've come to call it. And if I could perhaps ask Acting Manager Ford, or Director Ford, sorry, to give us an update on where we are on the Farnham Maitland roundabout. Is it going to be complete by Friday?
Through the mayor to Councillor Sanderson and all of council, We just this afternoon received an updated schedule from the contractor that would have them on site on Friday and Saturday paving the roundabout. So this is our first roundabout. This is the contractor's first time putting a roundabout together. It's been challenging trying to keep traffic moving through the work zone and trying to be able to expeditiously complete the project. But the schedule that they provided today would see them completing the grading this week, doing some other work, and the paving contractor is scheduled to be there on Friday and again on Saturday to do the paving. That's weather permitting. If we get delayed a day or two, it'll be bumped out a day or two because of the weather. But that is the current plan right now. And it looks like the whole project is scheduled to be completed by the end of the month. So the September 30th is the date they're telling us right now. So it's coming together quite nicely now at the end.
Okay, the second item I have is, it's not for the director, the Loyalist kickoff. A number of us attended there. Belleville Transit had a bus set up, a lot of interest. There were about 3 or 4 city staff there. We had the bus pool, or Manager Buck had the bus pool set up quite good. But to me, it's a two-edged sword. So with the good news for Loyalist and the increase in international students from 800 to 1,000, growing to 1,200, it's putting enormous is maybe an exaggeration. It's putting great pressure on our public transit system, and as well as housing for that matter. So I know that we're in discussion with them on housing. Councillor Carr, broached the subject of perhaps some funding discussions with Loyalist College in terms of supporting public transit, but it wasn't well received, I would say. And so I just wanted to make council aware that is a challenge that we're looking at, and it'll come back to the transit committee, see if we can come up with a solution for that as well. And those will be the two. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Anyone else? I have one item that I'd like to bring forward, and earlier this spring when we activated the emergency control group to deal with rising water levels of Lake Ontario, we were questioned about what the future holds. And I cautioned everyone, I said we weren't prepared to talk about next year or future years until we dealt with the current emergency situation. And now that we have done the bulk of the removal of all of the containment features or the mitigating features for that, and I really want to thank Manager Reed's people who have done a tremendous amount of work to get the area ready. Residents talked about how much better our response was this year. I want to thank Chief McDonald for supporting those meetings and moving on. I think now is the time for us to take a look at 2020. And I am very concerned because I continue to receive reports that predictions vary to as high as 6 inches to a foot higher levels in 2020 than we saw in 2019. And the 2019 levels were unprecedented. Another foot of water puts tremendous strain on some of our municipal resources, our facilities, et cetera. And while the capital budget this year already has some what I call minimal items to address some of the high water areas, and we took some other steps with respect to the water treatment facilities, I think we need to take a hard look at what preparations we have to make for 2020 in the event that some of these forecasts are correct and that we could see up to a foot higher levels of water. And so I know this is a multi-departmental initiative, and so I'm going to look to, I think, the CAO to perhaps lead that discussion about what we need to see at capital budget so that council can consider either the first step of a number of years worth of action or actions for this 2020 year in terms of flood mitigation. This is not, fortunately this year we did not have a lot of private property damage in Belleville. Certainly on Lake Ontario there was significant amounts of shore erosion, and there were problems. And what makes me angry about this is fully a man-made issue, and it has to do with the management by the International Joint Commission, and that's why Belleville City Council passed that resolution earlier calling for the revoking of Plan 2014 and going back to Plan 1958, which worked well for so long. But the reality is that there was damages to the city, and we did spend considerable amounts of money to be able to address this, but we need to understand what the capital investment will be going forward. So that's my request under new business in terms of the Lake Ontario levels for 2020. We'll move now to motions, and Councillor Thompson, you have a first notice of reconsideration because the motion that you're proposing be discussed was one that was dealt with by council, and you provided notice of us at the last meeting. Thank you. I'll recognize you, and I'll ask for a seconder for your motion of your motion of reconsideration, and then I'll welcome you to debate. Councillor Thompson is moving reconsideration of that item, seconded by Councillor Millette. Councillor Thompson, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'll read the motion that the Facade Improvement Committee recommend to City Council that the maximum grant allocation for 2019 Facade Improvement Program application for 265 Front Street, Eddie Hausler, be approved in the amount of $20,000, subject to the requirements of the Facade Improvement Committee, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the commitment agreement with the grant recipient on behalf of the corporation, the City of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to fix the corporate seal. And the reason I'm bringing this forward today on a reconsideration is that at the last time, we felt as a committee that there was not enough information available to the councillors to evaluate the program and the request on that particular piece of property. Since that point in time, we've had a lot of new information come forward. Thomas Deming has that information. If it gets on the floor to reconsider it, he will pass that information around. I was asked earlier to have that information available to them, one of the councillors earlier. I was told by the clerk that we cannot distribute it until it gets back on the floor, but there is some vital information. I've made a couple of notes, but before I can discuss it with that vital information of why this program should be provided to that person, I need to get it on the floor, and unfortunately, I need 2/3 vote to put it back on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Right before, I just want to double check something. If everyone can just give me one moment,
Yep.
and if I can just confer with with Director McDonald. Yeah, so on a notice of reconsideration, which has been properly brought before us, the only member that's allowed to address the issue is the person making the motion, which was Councillor Thompson, and he followed the rule. He did it exactly correctly, where he spoke to the reasons for the reconsideration, not to the main motion, and that's entirely in order. So you've made your presentation, Councillor. I'm going to call the vote. As you noted, it requires 2/3 support in order to proceed to the main motion. All those in favor? We have 6, so the motion is now on the floor. And so Councillor Thompson, I'm assuming that you and Councillor Millette are moving the motion itself after this reconsideration, so I'll open the floor to you for debate.
Thank you very much, and it's great to have it on the floor. I just made a couple of notes, and then I'm going to call on the staff resource to bring any information forward and present it to councils. Thomas is here. And while he's doing that, Thomas, can you hand that out to the different councillors, if you don't mind, please? But a couple of points that I made for it. You know, there was some comments at the last meeting about the gate or the garage door. That door is going to be situated on the building at the back, and that's where most of the facade program improvements is going to make, is on the back, that building at the back. And then on the building that's on the north side, that wall would be completely redone. The stone will be repaired, the wall will be refaced, but the garage door will be the door that's going to be put in the building will be a glass door that will show entrance into the building. The building is about 2,000 square feet. It's going to be used possibly in the future. The front part will be used for retail, the back part for studio, and it's about 2,000 square feet. And the program's going out, and I'd ask Thomas maybe if he would come forward, and maybe if I got the okay of the council, and the mayor, to come speak for it, and maybe some of the councillors have some other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Deming, do you have anything you want to say first?
Yeah, through the chair, your worship. I think one of the main issues with it, the original time, was the lack of building. I think what needs to be clarified is that there is actually a building at the back. The courtyard in front will be a part of it, but it won't actually be what the facade improvement is going towards. It's for the facade on the front of the building and then the facade on the north side of the wall.
All right. Before I open it up to questions, if I can, and this may be an unfair question for Director Hines, especially because you don't have this information. Director Hines, when we look at the assessing of property taxes in that area, the space from the street, the sidewalk, back to that building, what level of assessment on property taxes do we normally assess in those situations? Do you understand my question?
I don't believe I can answer your question.
Okay.
It's a commercial assessment, but I'm not sure what the impact would be.
Okay. Do you know off the top if we assess patios as space for property taxes? At the same rate as buildings?
I would
Okay.
need to seek an opinion on that.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. Just so I understood you correctly, Mr. Deming. The north side of the building, this funding is to improve the north side of the building. Did I hear that right?
Through your worship to Councillor McCaw. It's kind of a unique situation. There's the open space that's in front of the building at the rear. Yes, so the north side is that side right there. That's owned by the applicant as well. So they are doing some improvements to that side. Restoration of the original brick, adding iron rod kind of gating around the windows there. And then the rest is for the building at the back.
Just further to that, and maybe someone can enlighten me, does the facade improvement program take into account the front and the rear of the property? Is that correct?
Through your worship, Councillor McCaw, it does. The facade improvement program itself can take into multiple facades. That's where we have different level of funding as well, that being one of them.
So this building at the back that we're talking about, is this the building you're referring to?
That is correct.
And that's really not the facade at the street? It's not a front facade at the street, it's set back. Am I understanding that right?
By the zoning bylaw definition, that would still be the front facade. The front yard itself is from the front property line to the first part of the building itself. So technically it is. Sorry, through your worship.
Okay. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm supporting this, and I supported it the first time it came around because I believe Ms. Huslauer has stepped up with something that is much needed downtown. This is a vacant spot. If anybody knows what it looks like now or has taken the time to drive by, it's basically where there was a fire, and this is one of those toothless gaps in our streetscape. This is a terrific opportunity to breathe some new life into what would have been just an empty space. If there was ever an argument for the facade committee, and we've seen, and we discussed it here tonight, that since the city did the significant investment downtown, we're now seeing buy-in from the private enterprises up and down Front Street. This is a sterling example of that. We can split hairs over to what faces what, but again, this is a facade improvement like no other, and I think if we can encourage more outside the box thinking like this, all's the better for downtown. I really think this is an innovative idea. I think it's something that was perfectly suited for this program, and I urge my fellow councillors to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Thompson? You're going to speak last? Okay. Councillor Williams?
Thank you very much. And I just concur. I really support this. You know, it is out of the box thinking, as my colleague just stated. You know, speaking from the Downtown Association and what they see for this, they really see this breathing some new innovative life into downtown. They're looking forward to, you know, we've talked before about different ideas even with pop-ups in different times of the year. They're talking about holiday plans for this, utilizing this space in the wintertime. And if anyone's ever been to the Christmas market and the Distillery District in Toronto, this is the kind of space that they utilize. Some commercial space where they can make that alive, you know, trees, entertainment, just different aspects to bring people downtown. And you know what? I think this is what this is all about. I think I lived downtown at the time when they had haberdashery, and it was in front of here, and I think it was just painted. So, you know, we had a painted facade, and that was kind of left. This breathes life into a space that just completes downtown a little bit more, and I think that's the spirit of the program. I think that's the spirit of what Ms. Hauslauer is trying to do here, so I really support this.
Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Mayor Panchuk. Mr. Deming, just one question. Does this application meet the facade improvement criteria set out by the City of Belleville?
Through your worship to Councillor Carr, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Culhane?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Mr. Deming, facade to me has always meant front wall, and I've read the rules. It still means front wall. Is there any way to separate out the front wall that appears in that picture from the side walls? Because there is a limited amount of money that can be spent. And I appreciate the idea, the sketch is beautiful, but facade is facade. Can that be done? Do you have any idea what the front of that building would cost, even though it's set back from the street?
Through your worship to Councillor Culhane, I don't have the exact figures. The applicants submitted the quotes based on the total project. I do know that they were planning on doing the south wall as well in that area, but they didn't include that. It's in the past, the committees went back to them and said, this wasn't available. Can you provide us with different quotes? At the time, the committee considered this as a second facade, which the program does provide funding for, so they didn't ask for that at that time.
All right, anyone else? So I'll make a couple comments, and then I'll turn it over to you, Councillor Thompson, to wrap it up. And you know, I've received a number of contacts or comments from property owners in the downtown that have applied for the facade program in the past, who have expressed to me concerns about the fact that we have a property that is undeveloped. And is going to continue to be undeveloped. I look at the, you're fine, you can sit down, Mr. Deming, thank you very much. We're now just going to debate, I don't have any more questions. But, you know, we have a property that is 1,000 square feet, and it looks to me, even on this diagram from the Three Hills Engineering, that there is more courtyard space than in the building in the back. And the fact that that is not going to be built into a building to be flush up on the street with the rest of the buildings means that they're contributing a different amount of property tax revenue to the city, and our investment through the facade program is to encourage people making those investments. But we don't have the same stream with this property as we would someone else. Other properties that have come up have had their full property area utilized, and they're paying property taxes to the city of Belleville on the entire amount. I can appreciate that it's less expensive not to develop the site, but I also don't believe, and I agreed with the people that had contacted me, I also don't believe that we should stop them from wanting to do this. Absolutely, if the landowner wishes to proceed with this project, that's great, but not to use taxpayer revenue to assist them with the facade program. That is not consistent with what we've been doing, and it's not in the same light. Furthermore, do we really want to encourage these gap teeth style of properties through our downtown? I appreciate that there's different thoughts on this, and that my idea may not be the only one. But I would prefer to see this building rebuilt, back out to the street, and then certainly it would be qualified in my mind under the facade program. The fact that it's not being constructed and we have a setback of at least the amount of space that the commercial unit number 1 occupies, just doesn't in my mind equate to the same thing. Again, I applaud the concept, and if the property owner wishes to do that on their own, that's great. But if they're asking for the support of the City of Belleville, then I think we should expect that their buildings be similar to other ones downtown. Take a look at the facade programs that we granted this evening earlier. All of them are for full-sized properties, fully utilized, and it's part of what the investment that we want to make. So I won't be able to support it, and I appreciate that everyone has their individual opinions on it, but those are my thoughts on it. And Councillor Thompson, I'll recognize you for the wrap-up on it, and then we'll call the vote.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just that I ask for your support. It does fall under the guidelines of the facade program. And if you look at the last umbrella magazine that was on our counter, it certainly shows some music taking place of that in front of that particular building, or that empty spot now with the gates in front of it. So the potential's there to make some great use out of that particular area, and more again, beautification of the City of Belleville. And it does fall under our facade program commitment. And the future that she may be making for that particular unit, we don't know yet. But if you look at some of the drawings and our thoughts for the future, it's certainly an addition to our city. So.
Thank you. So the resolution's on the floor. All in favor? It's carried. The next item is notice of motions. Any notice of motions this evening? Announcements. Anyone have any announcement they can make? I'm going to ask Chief McDonald to start off with the announcements. I'm going to ask him to tell us a little bit about September 11th, 2019, and what our plans are for the community gathering and remembrance.
Thank you, Your Worship. This year marks the 18 years since 9/11 occurred, and since the first anniversary, Belleville sent 20 firefighters to the first anniversary memorial ceremony to represent Belleville at the first annual ceremony at Ground Zero. And we've had a memorial service every year. Sometimes it's been at the Moira Street Fire Hall. We have utilized our Quinte Sports and Wellness Center on some of the occasions, and they were very well attended by the public. The public has always had great support. We receive phone calls every year asking us where the ceremony will be. The ceremony is always traditionally held between 8:30 and 9, and because at 8:46 is when the first plane hit the tower, and that's usually our minute of silence. We've always had great attendance regionally from first responders and municipal leaders and municipal representatives from all of our neighboring municipalities. So this year, with Quinte West being our nearest neighbor that we do a lot with from the emergency response point of view as well. So Quinte West is going to be hosting the regional event this year. So Belleville will be going as a guest of Quinte West, because in our previous ceremonies, Quinte West has always attended it, as have other municipalities. So we would welcome everybody to go to the Quinte West new fire headquarters station that is right by the old OPP station that's becoming, or the old Trenton OPP, which is now becoming a new OPP station right beside it. So we would like to welcome everybody to come and join us in this remembrance ceremony, and we always, as always, the responders, police, fire, the paramedics, we really appreciate the support the public has always shown for this remembrance ceremony.
Great, thank you very much, Chief. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Just very quickly, two items. Councillor Millette and Councillor Kelly and myself sit on Quinte Conservation, and they have an open house For Foxborough area residents on flood mitigation, there's 5 options being considered. It's September 11th from 3 to 7 p.m. at the Thurlow Community Center on Harmony Road. Secondly, myself along with Councillor Sanderson will be holding town hall meetings for Ward 2 residents. The first one is Tuesday, September 24th, 6:30 at the Thurlow Community Center, and Thursday, September 26th at 6:30 at Fire Station number 3 on Old Highway 2.
Thank you. Anyone else for announcements? I have a few that I just want to quickly go. Since our last council meeting at the beginning of August, there's been a number of events, but first, I'd like to proclaim the week of September 23rd to 29th as Rail Safety Week within the City of Belleville. As proud partners, our commitment is to keep our communities safe, and by raising rail safety awareness year-round, both the City of Belleville and our rail partners are doing this. So September 23rd to 29th is Rail Safety Week in the City of Belleville. Since the last meeting, there have been a number of events that I and a number of us have attended. First and foremost is a very successful Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference, where we have had a very good response, and I am anticipating some very good news next week regarding our Bell Boulevard West environmental assessment requirements. Also had the opportunity to do the grand opening of the Medigas City of Belleville Picnic Pavilion over at Riverside Park. And that was a great event and a wonderful accomplishment, and really thank Medigas for their long-standing contribution to Belleville, both with providing jobs for our residents, service to our residents, but also standing up and spending funds to make Belleville better. I was able to attend Ribfest at Gilmore's in the county to raise money for the Quinte Healthcare Oncology Department, and that was a great turnout with lots of wonderful entertainment and a good day. Last month, we had the opportunity to host a summer garden party at Glanmore House, and what a tremendous success that event was, where we could bring attention to Glanmore House. That was our first ever garden party of that type that we've done at Glanmore House, and the success of it will lead to that event hopefully being open to the public next year. We had some concerns regarding the capacity, and I think we've come along those lines, and we're already now reaching out to be able to have more people included in that in 2020. I was able to attend the retirement for Captain Cody McGilvery from the Belleville Fire Service, and what a wonderful opportunity to thank a gentleman who has done so much over his years of service to Belleville, and the fact that he's able to retire and to enjoy his retirement ahead of him is nice. It was truly great to see his family and the pride that the entire fire service have in their work. Last month, I was joined by a number of councillors for the former Mayor Robin Jeffrey tree dedication. Mayor Jeffrey served in the 1970s, 44 years ago, as a matter of fact, since she no longer was a public servant here in Belleville. And she is now, because she lived by herself, she's now having to relocate to be closer to family, and we were able to plant a new crabapple tree which will flower with white flowers, her favorite, in the park that is named for her. And I can't say enough about again, Manager Reed's people who helped with this. We have a new term for Roland Cave Brown Cave. He's now the city's, or I should say he's former Mayor Robin Jeffrey's yard man, as she referred to him. And she really went out of her way to talk about how good he was to deal with. And we have so many great staff like him. But, you know, the fact that he had helped with her and it was really appreciative. I think all of us were so happy. In particular, I was happy to be joined by former mayors Mary Ann Sills and Neil Ellis. We also celebrated by bringing attention to International Overdose Awareness Day here at Market Square, and brought together all the agencies which deal with this illness that needs to have some resolution, because it is robbing us of so many good people in our community. I want to congratulate the Quinte Exhibition and the Belleville Agricultural Society on a successful 198th running of that annual event here. There are few things that can say that they are 198 years, and we are so lucky and grateful to have them here in our community. I also attended the 25th anniversary for Quinte Business Accounting, And it's interesting that we had a deputation today by the Quinte Arts Council because that business is owned by the chair of the Quinte Arts Council, and you can see all the different organizations and agencies she touches in her involvement that were there. It was terrific. Last week, I had the great occasion to participate in the base commanders for CFB Trenton in the base commanders golf tournament. It was a terrific turnout and raised money for the United Way of Quinte. Last week, a number of us attended different events, but I was able to attend the hot stove event that the Belleville Senators put on in conjunction with the rookie prospects camp that they ran this year. The NHL, the National Hockey League teams of the Ottawa Senators, the Winnipeg Jets, and the Montreal Canadiens had all of their rookies participate in this exhibition, and it was right here in Belleville, which is amazing. We had national coverage through TSN, and we had a great turnout on those nights. And then we also had the opportunity to speak and to hear from coaches and general managers about the way of life in the NHL, and it's just one additional benefit of having a team like that here in Belleville. And lastly, I want to thank and congratulate all the people who were involved with Food for Thought. That was the event yesterday bringing awareness to mental illness and suicide prevention. And what a great day. It shows that we are a caring community that comes together to try to deal with our own, and we take care of it. And it's not often that I am not astounded by all of the community groups we have in our city that come together for a variety of reasons. They do it because they care and they see the need and they step forward, and we could never do it ourselves as a government, but we're so fortunate to have them. And I want to thank everyone for attending yesterday and helping to raise the funds and raise awareness of suicide prevention. With that, I will ask for a confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2019-170, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on September 9th, 2019, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 9th day of September 2019. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor? It's carried. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Culhane. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.